Hey, hey. Hi, it's Tori Chrisman. Hi, One Love. Looking forward to that. I agree with you. And Y2 Watcher. All right. Happy to see Tori and Dylan. Dylan will be here any second. I just talked to him. And he's home and he's just logging on to I just sent him the invite. So he's getting it. It's traveling. He said he got it. So he should be here in any second. Yay. I know. So how are you guys? All right, let me see. Hi, Kelly. Looking forward to this. Yeah, I know. Me too. Unstoppable SP. All right. Hi, Miss Tori. Hi, Brandon James. All right. So far, JB80 Wade. All right. You guys are here. It's good. Y2 YT Watcher. Connect. Not sure if there is a topic for tonight. In chat, Dylan provides much wisdom, tolerance, and calmness while understanding his own boundaries. Might you share your ongoing healing journey? I might at a different time. This is going to be a Q&A with Dylan. So people can ask him whatever they want as far as that as soon as he comes on. Let me just clean up my glasses. Um, I think I've been sharing my healing. Oh, there he is. He's on. All right, just a second. There he is. Hey, hey. It's a man about town.
Hello.
Hello. Hail Lord Xenu and hail Princess Xenu. Long may they reign supreme over us all. All right. Likewise, Kelly, thank you. All right.
I feel like I should
So
switch this.
Kelly said she loves seeing us. So that's good. Hi, Dylan. How did everything go with the games?
Swell.
Swell?
Hmm.
Good. I like your setup there. It's different than the other night.
No, same.
It may be just a different angle of the camera, but I can see a wall that I couldn't see the other night.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So this is basically going to be a Q&A with you, and people can ask you questions, or you can ask me questions if you have questions, or I can ask you questions. Someone just said, let me just see if I can find it. Just a second. They said, Y2 Watcher said, comment, not sure if there's a topic for tonight, which the topic is basically, we did an interview with Dylan about a week ago, right? And
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago, I think.
yeah, so this was a Q&A with Dylan, so that you guys can add, because that was more, we were just talking. And so we thought, well, you might have some questions. So that was the main topic. And Y2 Watcher says, in chats, Dylan provides much wisdom, tolerance, and calmness while understanding his own boundaries. Might
Yeah.
you
Well,
share ongoing healing journey? Pardon me?
right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that kind words. I guess. There you go.
It's true. You
There
are,
you go.
yeah. So I guess Y2 Watcher wants me to share my ongoing healing journey. Or do you mean Dylan? Because I think Dylan. So why don't you, Dylan, share your ongoing healing journey?
Um, yeah, I'm not really that's sort of a
That's a big, broad
yeah,
topic.
it's sort of a big paintbrush. Um, not so sure what my healing journey. I don't know. I think it's a lifelong process. It's kind of
Yeah, it is. It kind of is a lifelong process. Hi, Rib Guy. Welcome. Good to have you here. And hi, Bridge. Um, yeah, I think for both of us, and for most people I know that we're in, it's kind of an ongoing if you're working at it, it's an ongoing healing thing. That's the way I see it. And
I stream with with Jenny. No, Kelly, I've usually, if people invite me to their channel, I just go on their channel. I don't really stream it to my audience, or I don't really have an audience. So. But yeah, I don't really do the dual streaming per se. So,
okay.
not that
Dual,
there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying.
dual streaming meaning like we're both on. I'm interviewing you, like we're both on at the same time.
Yeah, like I do it to my channel, and then you do it. I think that's why I don't really grow my channel or do, because most of the I've done a ton of interviews, but I haven't done anything on my channel for a long, other than like a bunch of comment posts or community posts, which I think mostly just are for me to kind of vent or whatever. So yeah, I
True.
don't know.
Well, you were at C.S.T, which is, tell us what it is.
C.S.T is the Church of Spiritual Technology.
That's right. And that's like way at the top. And isn't it, it still kind of blows my mind that the owners of that, this is what I heard, were actual attorneys that have never been in Scientology. Is that correct?
I don't know if owners is the right nomenclature per se, but yeah, there were a handful of attorneys in the founding of CST. It was kind of during that like corporate reorg.
Right.
So it was a part of that general purpose of what, whatever eval was done to justify that kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, this is a question Janine Pointer has. Question, Dylan, why did you leave the SPTV Foundation?
Why did I leave the SPTV Foundation? That's a good question. Well, I'm not a really good follower or lemming. I'm not really a yes person or a social I don't really go with the social norm. I'm not really good at small talk. So when you're expected to be in a follower role without, any information and well,
And
like you're flying blind a lot and you're expected to be just like blindly obedient.
right.
That's just not a really good fit for me.
No.
So I had to kind of change. Like my purpose was a little different. I don't think it aligned. No, Marty Rathbun did not manage CST.
Pardon me?
I was just looking at the comments. So yeah, I think that's mostly why I left.
Yeah, that sounds correct. And we're happy to have you.
Am I in another place now? Am I in another group that I didn't know
I
about?
think you're more, you're around more now because you're busy then, it seemed.
Yeah, I kind of got dragged back into this whole YouTube thing about 2 years ago now, and when Aaron reached out to me and talked to me about this new guy that came on and was causing all these problems, um, and so I kind of dove back in and when it's hard when you I guess when you don't have like a support structure, and then I think the real definition of trauma bonding is kind of what's happening a lot of is that we all relate and have a similar trauma, but when you really start going any deeper than that, that's kind of where all the similarities seem to end, which is sort of makes me a little sad, to be honest with you. Because there's a lot of hurt people that have been brought into this with maybe the hope of healing or the hope of finding a path that doesn't feel so overwhelming because there's other people that have experienced it. And then when that kind of doesn't really come to fruition, or when we kind of get our expectations ahead of our acceptance, it kind of leads to a lot of what Scientology would say, what misemotion. So there you go.
Right. All right, here's another one from Power Lies to Paralyze, which I love that nickname. The founders of C.S.T. were not Scientologists. Mead Emery was a retired assistant director of the IRS. Wow. That's right, I remember his name. Interesting. And someone else asked a question about that. Was it founded? I think I remember the question. It was CST founded by LRH or Miscavige? I think it was
No,
Hubbard, right?
no,
No.
no. There were advices for CST, but um, most of the ones that were attributed to LRH weren't like signed by him. They were signed by his um, monogram that he used after he quote unquote left all Scientology lines.
Um,
So it's hard to tell. You know, I guess like you could say generally, yeah, he wanted to have his name etched in history. He wanted to stamp his name so that it'll never be forgotten and memorialized. And if you look at David Miscavige's kind of chief goal and purpose, it's to get the all clear for LRH to come back and be the head boss again, quote unquote. Um, so it kind of aligns that way to, and honestly, it's even at that time, um, Scientology International, and the international statistics were basically leaning towards downtrending. And how do you subvert policy without holding with not be accountable, right? So you divert and you distract. And
right.
one way to do that is, subsequently the front groups became the new missions. And it subtly changed enough to where most of the people that were involved um, had really no choice but to accept it. So um, when I think ASI was more of an LRH thing, and
That's what I thought.
CST was its kind of like next evolution, but it didn't have a lot to do with him. Like he wasn't on those lines per se.
He wasn't on those lines, but they were pushing his books. That was
Well,
the
ASI was,
science
yeah,
fiction.
ASI Writers of the Future, like that was
Yeah,
all that PR into the like that's when they came out with the lithographs
yeah,
of Mission or Battle Mission Earth, um, and even Battlefield Earth. I mean, every time there was any kind of literature they could put out, they would do it gold bound, leather bound, lithographs, art, and sell it to all the. It's kind of like how probably KDLC got into her art. Like it's there was already a market there,
right.
so it's easy to, you know, sell other
And
shit
they
on.
had us over, and they did these like little, I don't know what you'd call them. They were like almost like a little short play about something, and they were all dressed in black, and it was sort of weird. And
Right.
they'd do this little play thing, and then they'd reg us to pay for, you had to sign up for a book a month of the science fiction, and we didn't like science fiction, so we did it anyway because we just did. Because they were saying this will really protect the tech and all this stuff, and we were like, okay, whatever. But I had a bunch of them for a while. I guess Harold took them when I got divorced because I
Yeah, it
don't
was
have.
more, I think, internally and even to most public, it was kind of more of like PR area control rather than, um, this is like, oh, here, you need to buy this because of the reverence you have for LRH, or, it was more like, hey, this is what we're doing now. Everybody needs to be on board,
Yeah, and it
so.
was also to protect the tech. That's what they said. That was what they were pitching
Yeah, for all time. Right, right. Exactly.
forever.
Yeah.
So now, did you, at the time when you were up there, did you think that sort of BS, or did you think that was real?
What?
Protecting a tech forever.
Well, I mean, on its face, yeah, of course that's what they're doing. At least for as long as they can with the technology we have.
Right.
Like honestly, it's one of those things that could perpetually be redone. Like when it was starting to be archived, you could now say, oh well, the technology is advanced, so we either need to take all that stuff out and update it with newer stuff that'll last longer. So I
Okay.
mean, there's always going to be a way to kind of spend money and act like a religion, and where really, and that's like even the whole joke, right? Most anybody who was a Scientologist for any amount of time, it was a joke that it was a religion. It was never really this,
Yeah, we
like when the
never.
volunteer minister, like when there was a flap, so everybody had to become a volunteer minister, and it was
Yeah, we
always
did it in a week,
right.
in
Well,
one
and
week.
even the whole philosophy, like I grew up on the philosophy of the mind and knowing how to know, like it was almost like the cherry on top. Like you had your religion, you had your faith, your morals, your ethics, and then Scientology was. It's like it's like a Mormon light. It's like we're morally superior. We have integrity. We have all these levels above your normal person who's blind and uninitiated and can't see. Right. So that was kind of the justification of Scientology. And it was always, as a kid, it was more the philosophy of the mind and learning, like most people with Dianetics were like, my uncle told me when I was 6 or 8, or he's like, yeah, a Dianetic session's just like two people having a really good conversation and one person realizes something they never knew about themselves.
Right.
So it's kind of like, and then we turned into this religion and we were signing up your kids for 1 billion years, and I mean, it sort of just kind of subtly morphed, and everybody
Yeah,
was like, oh, nothing
definitely
to see
more.
here. This is normal. This is what we do when, the estimation of effort gets, and look at, the 80s, and this aggression will not stand, Gorbachev. Like
Right.
they had every reason to play on that and to get everybody and lead with fear and anxiety, and and it's sort of, that's how
Well,
they,
and
but they
also
do it.
they were getting sued, and that's what really started, at
Yeah,
least they
not
put
one
it.
thin dime for Wollersheim.
Yeah, not one thin dime from. We had to wear these dimes, and they gave everybody a dime, and it was like, and we had
Funny.
this chant around the courthouse, not one thin dime for Wallersheim.
Yeah, we
And
used to do
we
OTTR
won.
zero.
Huh?
We used to do we would when I was doing my student hat um at in San Francisco, we would go out at break time and the whole course room would go out and do OTTR zero towards the course room. Yeah, it was like crazy. And that's what's weird even now. Like Scientology doesn't talk about when they protested, and it's not. I mean, maybe they have it memorialized somewhere, but they're so afraid of these protesters that are speaking their truth, and it's just the exact same as they were doing when they thought they were being persecuted.
Right.
So it's, I don't know. I guess it's pretty normal.
Oh, it was pretty weird. I remember OSA came up to me and they said, okay, everybody's going to do the minister's course in 1 week. So you got to get on the course, do the course, and finish it. And we were all ordained. It was like this mass ordination of all these ministers. And
Right.
then they said, we're going to put on the outside of every folder priest
Priest, penance.
penitence
Yeah.
privilege. And
Yeah.
thus the judges can't look in the folders and see what
Well,
was written.
and if anybody's like using like perspective, like those were the first volleys back and forth with the IRS. It's like there's like Scientology was caught with their pants down during the Larry Wollersheim case because
Right.
they were completely under one umbrella, the Church of Scientology of California. So everything was C.S.T, right? And he sued the Church of Scientology of California. And so it wasn't just like, oh, okay, you can see that, no big deal. That was everything. Like that was the entire everything internationally with Scientology was that. So when they were like, oh shit, we're kind of dead to rights, we need to come up with a new plan. The way they pivoted was to say, okay, well, if we become a religion and get this sorted out, and then look, all the priest pennant, the volunteer ministers course, the way they do the outreach, like they way to happiness, able, narcanon, wise, like apply, like they've gone through subtly and changed everything to look like on the outside a valid religion that satisfies by the letter
Right.
what you need to be a religion from the eyes of the IRS. So,
And wasn't it back then that they created Church of Scientology International, which was like an umbrella with all the
well,
front
that's when they
groups?
created CSI, and then they did SMI, and they did Able, and
Right.
and then they did CST in like 82, 83, maybe, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um and those were all like, what was being said was like, okay, here's our expansion, and this is where it's like now it's like all the ideal org programs um um were kind of that way to satisfy and kind of way to keep this umbrella, so that if you it's like the octopus idea. If you cut off one arm, there's seven more, right?
Right.
And that one will grow back in a different form. And
Right.
so there's, it's like you get your hand slapped or your wrist chopped off, and you're not going to do that again if you have any. I mean, I guess the precursor is, if you look at it with perspective, Scientology has been a paranoid schizophrenic organization since the 50s. They've been at war with everybody.
Right.
Like, not just they are at war, and I'm sure you've been in for since 69, right? So
69.
the enemies list is a good example,
What
right?
is?
There were the enemies list that they used
Oh,
to
yeah.
publish, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it was like, it wasn't just, I remember as a kid in Northern California, like Est was huge because it was like, so a lot of prominent Scientologists started it, the process church, the like, it goes on, and there's all those are listed in the enemies. Scientology would find every target they could, and they had an outward facing organization at the time, just to go and destroy and expose and eliminate any threats against Scientology, including the government, including
Right.
like, so,
Uh,
that was kind of, yeah.
and my ex-husband's parents got it in 1950. And she told me, his mother told me, yeah, we started out as Dianeticists, and a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of us
Mm-hmm.
stayed, but a bunch of them left. As soon as he started the church, they said, we did
Right.
not get into a religion, we're out. And they left.
Exactly.
And
Right.
I
That was
think
like the
that's
first
when he,
Exodus.
yeah, and I
Right.
think that's when he created the PTSSP, because it
Right.
was like, you can't talk to these people.
I want to say the PTSSP came out right after the first set of basics. Like, when they eradicated the mission network, and then they started implementing like success through communication instead of the old Hubbard apprentice Scientologist or
Mhm.
Hubbard qualified Scientologist course. Um, and they kept student hat, but they did like personal integrity and self analysis and all these little $50 intro courses to get people in. And that actually, I think that was right about the time the mission network, those were implemented through the mission network. Because my
But
aunt
that was
was,
the course. But I'm
right.
just saying that he came up with the idea of declaring someone suppressive earlier than that.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
That's like 78 and even prior. But I think
yeah.
the suppressive policy was right around, like, maybe it was even, maybe I'm mixing this. Maybe it was 67 instead of
I think it
76.
was in the 60s
Yeah, I think it
because
might have been. Right.
69, they were already telling me about SPs and you can't do this and this is a high crime. And one thing I mean to say, and I really think every person who speaks out should mention at least once in their videos, is that he and I, and the majority of people that were in the Scientology Truman Show, there was no internet. So people ask me all the time, how could you
Right.
believe this shit? And I understand it. I mean, knowing how much, I mean, the average person can go on now and know so much stuff about Scientology that we knew nothing about. Nothing. If you
Well,
literally found out anything, let's say somebody said, oh, that guy across the street left Scientology and he knows all this shit. If you went over to his house, you were declared suppressive. That's how it
right,
went.
right, right,
So
right.
it was just like, okay, I'm not going there. I'm not.
Well, and we were all teaching ourselves almost every time we got involved with anything Scientology to put ourselves in this state of um, easily being impressioned on, like a state. I don't. Why is it missing me? But um, we kind of made ourselves this vulnerable state to be like to have implants or have, like with the TRs, you put yourself in this trans kind of state, and it's voluntary. Even with auditing and like at the beginning of auditings, every auditing session is rudes. Your
They
rudiments
don't know
are,
what rudes is. Not everybody. So
yeah,
say what
well,
God.
it stands for rudiments. And what it basically is this is before you go in session. So you get the cans, you do your squeezes, everything seems good. They get your TA, which is your tone arm, right? And then when everything's looking good, they're like, okay, so have you eaten enough? Okay, did you get enough? And they check these reads on the meter. And part of them are, do you have any present time overts? Do you have any present time withholds? Do you have any present time problems? And then if there's any movement on the needle at all, they have to dig into that and find and pull that. So you can spend 2-3 hours just getting your basic rudes like flown. And you might not even get to the session or what you were trying to do to help yourself.
Right.
It just now becomes an interrogation that a report will be generated and given to HCL. So it becomes like you put yourself in these states to be impression, to be, have commands thrown your way, and to
But
be
originally, because I was an auditor, so let me
yeah,
just give my 2 cents of it. Because originally, like the original Rudes, first of all, they didn't have squeeze the cans or anything like that, right? In the very
right,
beginning, when I got trained in it, it was just, you just started out. You'd sit down, I'd sit down, and I'd say, okay, this is the session. Do you have an A or C break? That was the first thing,
right,
which is
AOC
an
break,
upset. Any kind of an upset you have with
right,
any friends or your family or your dog or whatever, and then you would handle that.
right,
And okay, so now you're better and you're like, okay, I feel better about that. Okay, good. So the next one was, do you have a present time problem?
right,
That was the next one. And present time problems, anything right now that's bothering you that, yeah, my hair is falling out, whatever, whatever it
right,
is. And then you would, you had a fight with somebody, you take it up and you'd handle that. Then the last one was the one about overts. It's like, do you have a missed withhold?
mm-hmm,
And that's like a missed withhold is something where someone nearly found out about it. And Hubbard said that's the worst kind because you're always thinking, did they find out? Didn't they find out? Right?
right, and your attention's on it, right?
Your
Remember
attention's
in
on
the ethics book, the example he gave was a kid that the mom's like, okay, don't eat any cookies before dinner.
it.
And then he goes and eats a cookie. And then she's like, did you, and she'll just say, even just being like, hey, Johnny. And it's like, she knows I ate a cookie and she's going to bust me. And so
Right.
you miss that whistle. And that's sort of the,
Yeah. And
what
then
I
they get
do.
worse because of that, because it's missed.
Yeah. Or
So
they
yeah,
don't.
I had that happen actually with my son where I didn't want him to eat a lot of chocolate, and we had some chocolate in the house. And I left and came back, and he had one of those big chocolate mustaches on his face, because he'd been eating a ton
Right.
of chocolate. And I came in, I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "Good." And I said, "Did you have any chocolate today?" And he said, "No." And I said, "I want you to think about this real carefully. Like, think about it. Did you have chocolate today?" And he said, "No, I didn't. I really didn't." And I said, "Okay." And I just started laughing. And he goes, "What?" And I said, "Why don't you come into the bathroom with me and look in the mirror?" And we just laughed about it because, to me, it was like, okay, whatever. I'm a
Right.
sugar freak myself, so I understand.
I hear you.
But anyway, those were roots. And then after all that's in, then you would say, okay, this is this, we're going to start the session on what you're actually supposed to be getting. But you're right. Sometimes the whole session would, for me, all of OT7 was rudiments. That was it. That's all I did was fly
Right.
rudiments, wanting to get off the stupid level.
Right.
And I was really pissed off.
His philosophy says, I think some of us know more about Scientology than actual Sea Org members. I mean, the majority don't even do that. Like, so just the confidential materials kind of thing is what,
Mm.
is that what, I guess that's what she means. I don't know.
What do you know?
What do you mean?
Huh?
She said she knows more than most Sea Org members. I didn't say that. I was reading her comment.
Oh, somebody said that?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying that, and I thought,
No,
okay,
no.
fill us in. When we were on OT7, they let us, because, they have the class 6 course, class 8 course, class 12. So apparently on the class 8 course, there's a whole bunch of top secret shit about OT3. So when we first got on it, they let us read it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my God, we didn't know any of this shit. Now, I think 2 or 3 days go by and they go, okay, that's it. No, you have no access to that. And we're like,
Right.
that's not fair. We already read it. Nope.
Right.
No, it's gone.
It's
That was
kind of
it.
like the same as OT8, which is sort of funny. Um, what
Dylan,
isn't?
are you the guy from the Church of Religious Technology?
No.
No, that's RTC. He's
Right.
C.S.T.
Yes,
Yeah.
that
He
is
was
correct.
I think C.S.T. is even above RTC, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
technically, yes.
Yeah. So he was like way, way up there. And you were around Miscavige a lot, right?
I communicated with them like a couple times a week, usually.
I was shocked. Have you seen Tom DeVock? He's now on Facebook.
He's been on Facebook for years.
No, he was for a long time, and then he got off for a long time, and now
Oh,
he's just come back. And
good
I
for
was
him.
reading his thing today, and he's got a whole thing about Miscavige and how paranoid he is about BTs and clusters. And I was like, "Are you
Right.
serious?"
So, when I first met Tom, I was in Clearwater, and he and Jenny were up at Int, and we had a commanding officer at the CMO who got sent to another org or a big mission, and then Int was sending down new people to be like the command team, and we had like one or two COs that just couldn't cut it because Clearwater is kind of if in Scientology, that is the busiest place there is.
Right.
There's a lot of money going. There's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of staff members, in both flag crew and the flag service org, So, Tom DeVocht and Jenny DeVocht at the time, Jenny Lenson, were sent in by mission from Int to be the commanding officer and the deputy commanding officer for internal. So Tom was the commanding officer and Jenny was the deputy commanding officer. And I was in charge of HCO at the time. So Jenny was directly she was my direct senior, and then Tom. So we were, so I worked with them until I got sent up to CMO IXU and then later to C.S.T. So, yeah, I knew Tom. I knew Tom.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I love Tom. I really do. He's a very great guy. All right, the Elk of Antioch says, Dylan, did you work with Marty Rathbun? Question mark. Any stories about him? He's disappeared? Question mark.
Jenny wasn't that bad, Kelly, when I knew her. She was getting there, but she hadn't been fully turned. Most of the stories that Tom tells is after he left Clearwater and got sent back up to Int. So the difference, like, um, Tom was in charge of like building the buildings and getting like there was always those lines are really the construction lines are really well every line in Scientology is really crazy. So if you screw up once, you get ethics. It depends how good of a person you are at what you do. Um, the level of ethics you get, kind of.
Right.
So when I knew Tom, like, and then when I went to C.S.T, I don't even know if Tom knew where I was or even cared. Not that it was like, not that we were like best friends or anything. But more of the stuff when he was working daily in person with David Miscavige, I was at CST and there was nobody at Int except for 3 people on the base, the Int base. Well, 5 people um, knew where CST was or really knew a ton
Right.
about it at
Yeah.
first. And then there was a little bit more people and they tried to integrate with study time because there was there weren't enough people qualified to go to CST to fill the org.
Right.
So we only had, literally under 20 people there. Like there's still to this day, I think 16 people at CST that
Wow.
run everything. So and RTC isn't much bigger, like honestly. Like when it comes down to what they say they control and rule and all these they're very small.
Yeah.
Um but if you're at Int and you're on those lines, like if you're on the Int landlord lines or Cine, or you have a lot of interaction with the inspector generals and the CMO Int terminals and that kind of thing. So we didn't as much because nobody from Int was allowed or would ever come up to CST for the longest time. And then that kind of changed a little bit, probably semi-date coincidentally with the whole and then Shelly going up to Int or to CST. So there you go.
Gotcha. And did you hear the question that I asked you before?
Which was that?
It was from the Elk of Antioch, and he said, Dylan, did you work with Marty Rathbun? Question mark. Any stories about him? Question mark. He's disappeared? Question mark.
I know Marty mostly from when he got out. Again, like Marty wasn't his job was kind of to deal with more outward facing legal problems, like he did some like the Lisa McPherson, like big flaps as like like that's sort of what he did. CST was held because technically CST is over and a completely separate entity
Right.
from RTC.
Right.
And when Scientology got their tax exempt status, CST hadn't gotten it yet, and they even got denied.
Really? They
And
didn't have
then
their tax. They didn't get it when
not
Scientology did?
no
Oh,
no not it's a totally separate entity,
yeah.
and it took a good few years for them to get it.
Wow.
Um, so that was what the separation was. Once the religious status was gotten, that was relaxed.
That was
Because
what?
then it was like the anybody from Int or RTC being able to go to CST was enforced basically because that's probably again a seep or a peek inside of what the IRS agreement was.
Right.
right? You can't, you have to disclose all your entities and all your ways and all the places. And CST was meant, it's like the fail safe. Like you think you got me and you think you figured out my backup plan to my backup plan and my plan after my backup plan. Well, I have a backup plan to that. And that's what kind of CST is. So it's a way to, it's like, look who's on the board of directors for CST, and I'm pretty sure you'll find David Miscavige on there. So it's sort of like, right, you couldn't ever revoke something. He couldn't ever get voted out because he's the one that controls the people that are. So it's, and that's where the lawyers come in. When you put lawyers in charge, and it's like, and I know I'm bouncing all over, but it's kind of like what OSA does. Here's our problem. We need to make blah, blah, blah stop attacking us. They don't go, hey, I need to hire you to surveil this guy because he's attacking us. They figure out a way to go, all right, if we find this person and we get them to talk to this other person and we get this other person to say this to his wife or his cousin or his uncle.
Right.
And they try to do it in a way that's not so overt. It's very covert.
Very covert.
Right? And it's on purpose. And so yeah, it's sort of, you're dealing with an entity that's been at war since the 50s. And it's not like a metaphor. It was, when you're in the Sea Org, it's life or death. Like that's what they hold over your head. That's why you work 120 hours a week. That's why you devote everything. You eat crap. You don't have toiletries. You get paid. When I was first starting the Sea Org, I got paid $16 a week. We didn't fill out taxes. I didn't file for selective service. I was gone. I was disappeared. My father basically gave me to a religion that then just disappeared me. I didn't have any record. I didn't have, when I escaped from Scientology, I didn't even have a driver's license.
Right.
Like, so
and they take your passport. If you have a passport, they take it. If you're in the Sea Org.
Yeah. Well, and they kind of go, by country. Like, oh, you don't know about us? Haha, let's target this country to get more people. It's like, and Flag was kind of the first line of that. Like, you'd see a bunch of Italians all over the place in the 80s. And you'd see, like there was all these levels of like, oh, they must have gone out to this country or they must have gone out to that country and they recruited a bunch of people. And like when they bought the Free Winds, everybody that worked on the Free Winds, they tried to recruit him into the Sea Org to say you could come right back and work on the Free Winds.
Yeah.
And there were people in the EPF that had never been in Scientology that were going through the EPF so they could go back and work on the Free Winds.
Yeah.
So, and who knows, some people might still be there. They might still be doing it. And by default, they're a Scientologist. So.
But again, they have no access to the internet. So the people that are watching and going, how could that be? Right. It's like they're insulated. They're very insulated.
Afraid of children. Huh.
So did you work with Marty Rothman?
Not in the Sea Org.
Okay.
I do know him and I knew him out of the Sea Org. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little story about Marty. After he left, he had the big blog. And everyone was sort of, I don't know if you do know this, but he had this blog that he put up.
Mm-hmm. Moving on up a little higher or whatever. I used to help them get plane tickets so they couldn't get found out. Like Rinder and those guys, I had a decent connection to do that. So I helped them out. Tom DeVocht, those kind of guys.
So he had a blog. And on that blog, everyone was like, hail Marty, like he was the king of the universe. And I was a declared suppressor. And I knew Jesse and I'd met Jerry and, just different people that had been on in out years before Marty. So I would go on his little blog and say, look, just so you know, these other people left, years before Marty did, in the dark, all alone, by themselves. And I just want you to know that. And I would do it like once a week, and nobody would ever talk to me. Nobody, except this one guy. He would talk to me, and I'll always thank him. But finally, Marty sends me something saying, open up a Hushmail account, which
Right.
I didn't even know what that is. So I open it up, and I feel like I'm going to have to go to the principal's office, and they're going to bawl me out. Right. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's going to say, what the hell are you doing here? You're not an independent. Get out of my sight. So I
Right.
open it up, and I'm ready for him to come on and bawl me out. And he just sends this thing for your eyes
That
only,
program. Yeah.
25-step program on how to muzzle Tory. He
Right.
sent it to
Right.
me.
Well, that's exactly what he did in the Sea Org. Like he was outward facing. So he didn't go in, he wasn't like all over every line sniffing. He was doing exactly that. He was running those programs and figuring out how do we administer this program without getting it being traced back to us or us getting
So
caught.
he was the one that ran that program?
Well, he would have been in charge of like, see, if you, it's like the one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing,
Yeah, that I
right?
know.
So what it would have been being run out of like Action CMO Int, where they fire missions and stuff, or
Mm,
OSA Info Bureau. And Marty would have been like a legal liaison. So
mm,
it's even internally, like he would know, but they would go with what's called a short story.
right.
And even in those instances, people use these words and it's cool that everybody knows the nomenclature, but there's some like very subtle differences to how they're administered. Like it's not just like, oh, you're doing this to me or blah blah. Like a short story is, it's even in missions and projects where you go, your job is to take on the demeanor and this of this, to call this legal firm to hire a PI firm in order to put an ad in the paper that Tori Magoo is like those are like what they did to Karen, right? Like get a phone number, get a this, get that, like you did for Dave, like LeBeau, right? You would get email accounts and you would get like 10 email accounts and then be like, here you go.
No,
And you
I
don't
never.
know what they were going to do with them.
No, I just opened up the phony accounts for Yachty.
Oh,
He
Yachty.
did.
I meant Bill Yachty, not, yeah, yeah.
No, he did
Um,
all that shit.
well, but right. But he wasn't like, hey, thanks for getting me these email accounts because I'm going to go do this and troll all these people and pretend like, like that. They don't do that at first. It's like you become, um, basically, if you want to know how Scientology and pretty much how David Miscavige operates, read The Art of War.
Yeah, that's a good,
And,
perfect
and
example.
that's the Data series. Get your hands on the Data series and
Well, the
read
art
it.
of war is
And
probably easier for them to get to.
well, I think the Data series is online somewhere. I think Scientology Geek is
Really? You think the data
has.
series is online?
I think if there's stuff, I think there's enough bits and pieces. And if it's not, it should be, because yeah, I think I would assume it is. I don't know. Um,
But
but
that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. The art of war they can get. That's a book. They can.
yeah,
They
but
can.
that's just like, so that's a broad stroke, and Scientology put it through their filter,
Right.
right, and translate it to their perception. Yeah, it is kind of. It's been translated as a book. Yeah, there's even a great like 13-part series on YouTube that's just awesome. The Art of War.
On
I'm
what?
answering. I'm answering One Love. Sorry, Tori.
What's it called?
She said, "Is the Art of War a book?" And yeah, it is, but it's also on YouTube and
Oh, the art of
so
war is.
yeah.
Okay.
My journey says with my research, young 20-something-year-olds David Miscavige, Marty, and Mike Rinder handled all missions around the world and would travel to them. David Miscavige was the leader. Okay. Like
Yeah.
travel, like mission, like the mission network
Yeah, that sounds. That
handled
doesn't
all
sound
missions around. Like, so the mission holders conference, like once LRH died, there was only a few things in place. Once like the coup happened and special unit was established, and like certain people were put in certain positions to help. Like it was like, if you want to know what was happening, like one of the best by far recounts, read Jesse Prince's book.
Yeah.
If you want to know what was happening and what side people and where that divide and who created that, because there was a time when the brokers came back to Int and it was like, hey, this is all going to work out. It's like, it was never going to work out.
Right.
So but he's a perfect example. Like his book is he was there, and everything he says rings absolutely 100% true, because he was there. He was a Sea Org member, a messenger. He was, like he was there. His recount is right from the fly on the
Well,
wall.
Hadley's is pretty cool too, as far as the art of war. I mean, the war is over, and the backstory on that.
Oh, Mark Headley.
Yeah, Blown
Oh,
for Good.
Blown for Good. Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
I
Um,
love that book. I thought it was
I've
funny.
never read that book, and
Oh,
I don't
it's
think I
so
ever will.
fucking funny. It's really great. It's the whole
It's kind of
backstory.
PR, right? It's like, yeah,
Huh?
here's me at Gold with my RTC wife. I don't
No,
know,
no, no, no.
whatever.
It's all the fuck ups that they did that
Right? No,
Miscavige had a heart
exactly, because he was in Cine, but he wasn't he didn't have that passion that LRH had to produce, and there were so many people blowing at the time that they had to remake all these, like the videos that were all everywhere. And as soon as somebody left, they had to redo all the videos. Yeah, so that's, but I mean, it to me, it's I get making light of it, and I get it's really a hard thing to unravel. It really is. It's everybody can make the best of a bad situation, and it's, I guess, as part of that healing journey, you become either, hey, well, that's my, it's like perception, right? And perspective. Like a lot of people that I've met in this group speak almost wholly from their perception, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when we're in this community or whatever everybody kind of talks about, um, it really would do a lot of us good to gain some perspective of how other people see it. And it doesn't invalidate your reality. It just is like, look, it's like you speak to the room, right? And if it's only from my perception, well, a lot of it's gonna get missed. So if it's a funny haha thing for some people, while other people are walking into electrical vaults and killing themselves, and the leader's wife is locked up, and the kids are estranged, and people are being like sexually abused, and kids are being I guess it's sort of funny if you don't
No, I
ever
get it.
look at it, and you
I
just
get
stay in
your
your
point.
little world, and like, and I don't mean you, I'm just saying, like,
No, but
so.
I just want you to I want to explain one thing Mark said to me that I think is very important in this whole thing.
Mhm.
He didn't he actually told the story of what happened in the book. He isn't just going, haha, it's funny. But the other thing is that he told me I did keep it on that end so that people in could talk to me. And
Right.
I thought
No,
that
and
was smart.
exactly. And you just described the Sergio Belinsky video. I did it so I could be the center of attention. I did it so people would talk to me. I get it. Like, it's sometimes better to like listen more than you talk, and maybe not listen to speak, but listen to understand.
Right.
Like I remember when I first met the Headleys. I had moved to Denver. I've never told this story, but and it's from my point of view. Um, the indie thing had happened. Mark and Marty were out. They were all still not in thing. The Squirrel Busters was probably going on. I moved with my two young kids, like 3 and 5 years old. I was married at the time. We were um it's hard to recover from some kinds of trauma. Like it's always kind of there, and it's inexplicable. And as you understand more and accept more and forgive more, it's easy to see why that is. But so we moved. That's just a way of saying it was like in those areas it was still very vulnerable, right? And so I kind of reached out to those guys, or knew they were in. Actually, I knew they were in Denver because I was talking to you, and because they had moved to Denver, they used to be in LA,
Yeah, they were
and
in Burbank.
and at that time it
Oh
wasn't
my
like they weren't accessible on purpose. Like neither was Marty, neither was Mike. Like there was still even out there was a hierarchy,
God.
and it was noticeable as somebody trying to actually restart their life and get through this and really start to confront this thing that is so overwhelming that it stops you after your first couple breaths or your first sentence or two,
Right.
right? And thinking that there's other people on this journey of healing and trying to understand and maybe even embracing therapy, or the idea that what we experienced, our perception, isn't exactly, it was molded, it was controlled, like your Truman Show analogy. It was a choreographed play, and
Right.
to think that we're just like, oh, I can just get out and it's cool, I got some money, I can be cool. Oh, hey, you want to talk to me? Yeah, that's right, I was WDC. Like, dude, whatever. Like, I was CST, I could run around and being like, I was higher than all you guys, you need to call me sir. Like, I'm trying to live, I'm trying to figure out how to live my life with no idea, with no, I don't, attachment styles, terrible in Scientology. Did I meet any developmental stages? No. I was an adult from the day I was brought into a mission. I was challenged to be an adult.
And that was at 14, right?
No, that's when I joined the Sea Org. I was selling Dianetics books door to door when I was like 10 years old.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I
Like,
talked to
I
Mike
never
about
heard
that one
that
time, and
from
he's
you.
like, I remember when we were doing that program. It was like right before they shut down all the missions. Like
Oh,
they'd go, and it was the whole idea of exchange. You get sent with a book, and it was like $15. I think it was 20, maybe 15 at first, and then 20. Or it was like a deal, 2 for 20 or something like that. No, it wasn't a deal because that's not exchange. It was $15 a book, I think. Um, and you had to do it. Like, so this was me, my dad telling me, you have to pay for your own courses and you have to take courses. And so you have to sell books to make the money to take courses. Because that's, otherwise, if I pay for your course, that's out exchange. So there
right.
you go, selling Dynamics books. So I was in Denver and I'm recovering from this overwhelming thing that you can just divert down like we just did, right? And I reached out to you. You knew how hard that was. I was pretty like it was freaky. It was like it brought so much emotion to the surface, right?
Right.
And I reached out to them. I was in a pretty good place. I was coaching high school and collegiate sports. I
Yeah.
was working. I chose to be a full-time parent as much as I could. I worked when my ex wasn't gone doing her job. Um, but my instinct as soon as my first kid was born was to be the parent I never had.
Right.
To And it didn't matter if it was an abyss that I would have to keep throwing myself on and maiming myself. I
Oh,
knew that that was the right way to do it.
yeah.
And I learned by beating the shit out of myself to be that parent. And that doesn't mean not confronting. It's hard when your 5-year-old asks you, "Hey, what about your dad?" That's and so we embraced those conversations, and we took the time to interact and speak about it.
Right.
Um, so I was in an okay place. You never have enough tools in your toolbox. You kind of, it's like you go out for a trip and you think you got all the tools you need, and then pretty soon you don't. And you're like, shit, I got to use these tools that don't really, like a crescent wrench where you should be using a socket or whatever. So I got to Denver and I'm thinking, wow, like there's other X's, like I was in the Sea Org and at places where I know my way around the Sea Org, and I know how it really, I was behind the curtain almost the entire time.
Right.
Um, so I reached out to them and we got invited over for a couple barbecue. It was weird. It's weird when like you meet some people and they're just real. When I met you, I mean, you're forgetful and you have to be reminded stuff, but that's just kind of who you are and you embrace it. It's not a weird thing. And, you know, even with us, when you tell me a story, I'm like, Tori, you've told me that like 20 times. And you're okay with somebody saying that. And you say to say that. So it's not, there's no, it's like I meet you where you're at and you accept people where they're at.
I know you're good at it though. You are. You're really a
With
kind
some
soul.
people, it's hard. Like you get this idea that there's an echelon and there's this, you know, there's this fear. Like fear is so prominent, but it's disguised as this pretty little floral design thing that doesn't look like hurtful or it could harm you or there's any thorns in it. Right. And so like we kind of interacted. We got invited to a couple barbecues and like the first time we went over there, one of the first things Mark Headley ever said to me in person was, "Hey, have you read my book?" Like
You're
seriously.
kidding.
No. And I was like, I kind of chuckled because I was caught off guard. I was like, wow, that's weird. Like he didn't I don't know even what he knew about me. We never had a conversation like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, no, I lived it. You know, and just kind of chuckled and walked away and played with his kids while he took a nap on the couch and played with my kids and just kind of goofed around. And then I was like, hey, I'm a stay-home dad. Like, let's hang out, you know, like sometime. And it's like it was this weird thing, like, oh no, we're this and that. And then you'd see him at a baseball game, and I'm like, well, that's weird, you know, like we didn't get the invite. And then it's like, oh, because Osa's following us, and you know, we didn't want to subject you to that. And it's like, well, isn't that my right as an adult to be your friend? Or, and then it's like, then I realized I had these expectations. I had these expectations of these exes to have worked on themselves and to have developed empathy and reciprocity and compassion and I realized a lot of people had never done any of the work. And
No.
that's okay. But that also means there's crossroads of healthy boundaries and distance.
Right.
And so when people show you who they are, you have to believe them, whether you want to believe them or not. Because I didn't want to leave the SPTV Foundation. I didn't want to do I want people to never have to experience all the fun times and laughter that I experienced working 120 hours a week for the next billion. You know, I want and like you do, like you do it in your way, but I wanted to do it like the people that are reaching out, I want to provide them a space to like decompress, to learn skills that don't trigger them, to give them. And it's very similar. I'm sure if any of those people would be standing here, they'd be like, well, that's what I do. That's what we do. But you don't do it with this secretive echelon. You're not in the know. I can't tell you. It's secret. Like if something's secret, shut the fuck up. It's secret. Don't say, oh, it's secret. I can't tell you. What do we call that in Scientology? A mystery sandwich. It's a no-no. You don't do that. Right? It causes people, okay, all you never ends. It causes people to list and null. It causes people to figure. It causes people, what other Scientology words can I think of? Right? Like it's you don't do that. So when we leave,
Think.
right, think exactly. And that is aberration by definition, right? Like you're not going from A to B, you're going from A to D to J to create. And so it was hard to see, like when I left the Sea Org, um it's like 10 years that I don't really talk about because
After you left.
after like me blowing and then being living again, there was like a good 5 to 7 years where I wanted not to be alive very much.
Oh.
And that's okay. It's part of, you know, how you get, it's part of how you get through things, right? And it's sort of, I don't know. It's really hard when you get to a point and you want to be like, in order for me to be the most authentic version of me, I have to accept other people for who they are and say that's fine. Like it's okay that you might not like me. It's okay that you might think that I hate this person or don't. I don't. I don't dislike Mark Headley. Do I agree with his maybe way? Do I agree with Aaron? No. Do I agree with Mark Headley? No. Those are people that haven't done any therapy and don't think they need therapy. And that's great. See, this is where expectations and acceptance. When you work hard and you're like, wow, I've done all this, and it's hard to go from like, what would be easier, denial or acceptance? Denial's so much easier. That never happened to me. I had a good time. It was great. I don't know what you're talking about. You've been out for how long? Right.
Remember when you and
Acceptance.
I were going to go to that barbecue? And I said,
Oh
Dylan,
yeah.
no, I'm not going because I knew the echelon from being here in
No,
LA.
we went to the Spanky one with
No, no, no,
Janice
no,
for her
no.
birthday.
Spanky
No.
wasn't there. That was a different one. That was an SP party.
Oh,
This
okay.
was the thing with Marty and Mike.
Oh, I went to that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
and
Okay,
I,
okay, okay.
we
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
invited. I said, no, I'm not going. I know the
Right,
echelon. You'll never get in to see him. We'll be out by the parking lot, and
right,
you know,
right.
it pretty much happened that
Yeah,
way.
that's right. That was like
Yeah,
'07 or
yeah.
something.
It was a
06 or 7.
long time ago. It was
Like
really long.
that's when I reconnected with Jackson and Cheryl and Jean and yeah, there was so many people. That's right when Karen got out and Marty and Mike were there with it was like, yeah, he Marty put out like a little book. It's funny because like I think that's part of the healing thing as well, is like I had so many like stable datums. I had so many things that I just knew were true. They just
Right,
resonated with me, like to my soul, like to my heart, to
right.
every that I was like, there's no way. And that's really hard to break free of that when you attribute that all to your religion and how you grew up. You have to systematically start saying, okay, what do I really believe? Life is in me today and I make my own tomorrows. I believe that,
Yeah, sure.
but I only ever knew that as LRH, right? And I had to say, okay, for me to break that, for me personally, I need to see, did anyone else ever say that? Or was that really him that said that? Or did he just plagiarize it? Or did he just take the concept and make it his own? Did he take the motion and then contribute to it? Or did he just, and that's where I started
Told
to
you
pick up.
I
Go ahead.
told you my friend spent 10 years with another friend. The other guy's dead. The one guy's alive still. And they spent 10 years tracing every piece of tech, major Scientology tech. And all of it had earlier beginnings. And
Mm-hmm.
many of it was from wonderful philosophies and,
Right. It's like
authors and
ancient
stuff like that.
knowledge.
And that's why
Imagine. Yeah.
we can say some of it worked. You know what I mean? Because it was from earlier stuff that Hubbard would just
Right.
take, rewrap it, put his little twist on it and say, I wrote it.
Right. Well, and that's sort of like the way I went down that rabbit hole was what are the two books? I think there might be three, but I know two that were in my head when I was walking the streets and hanging out in libraries for a long time. um, what are the two books that weren't written by LRH? So you leave the Sea Org, and all you are, your survival is source. If you in the Sea Org can quote the policy or the HCOB or the source text, you pretty much can't get busted. So, what are the only two books that were used in Scientology that weren't LRH?
That we used in Scientology? Did they sell them in the bookstore?
No, 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 no.
No, no, no.
Maybe they did one. No, I don't think they.
Probably,
But
probably
he talked about them. He talked about them in policy.
the Bible?
No,
No.
Big League Sales
Well, Big League Sales, yeah.
and The Art of
And
War.
The Art of War, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Those were the two books that were
start a
referenced
war.
all
Yeah,
through the HCOB, all through the policies, all
yeah,
through. You could find little. So those were. So then I read those two books,
right,
and then it was like, oh, and then I saw a lot more connection, and then I read like Barefaced Messiah and Piece of Blue Sky, and it's like a lot of those puzzle pieces start, and it's like, wait a minute. So at one point, he was trying to collab with people,
right,
and then it got, every, instead of it like, hey, we all got a bigger slice of the pie, it's like, wait, this is my pie,
right.
and you all are trying to steal my pie.
Yeah, he got way worse.
Well, Simon Bolivar, like
Right,
that's the policy, where it's like, it's like little Scarface, it's like the gangster mobster kind of thing of like, you can't take my piece of the pie, y'all are against me, everybody, and it becomes that paranoia for sure. So
right.
there you go. I think I successfully averted whatever with
All
that
right. So
tangent.
Rib Guy asked, did either of you work with Rena Weinberg? I did for a bit. If so, has she left? That I don't know. I don't think
I don't
so,
know
because I think
either.
we would have heard about it. Any updates? That's over to you. Do you know if she's any?
Same names familiar, did not work. I don't know if they're in or out.
I think she ran Able.
Yeah, and when it was downtown LA before the HGB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Janine Painter says, we're glad you're back. Wish you would do more videos on your channel, which I follow. There you go. That's you, Dylan.
Oh, thank you.
And then
I know.
Sophie, hi. She says hi to both of us. Welcome, Sophia, or Sophie. And everybody says hi to Sophie. And the Elk of Antioch says, except for Tori, I don't believe YouTube has actually helped anyone improve their lives. After Scientology, grief doesn't usually improve by being public.
Oh, like going on YouTube, and I kind of look at it like sort of like a journal.
Yeah.
I don't really look at it like this news thing to be reported and to be sensationalized and follow. I don't know that that's the way it needs to be. Um, so yeah, I agree. It's, peddling grief on YouTube is kind of, I don't know.
I know it's kind of weird. To me, it's just don't get me started. I agree. And it did definitely help me, and it definitely did. I would still be in Scientology without the internet. I would.
Right.
And
No, and you like, it's I get why people kind of um like you're in, or you're CI, because you got a lot of information, and like a lot of people did. Scientology was kind of the basis of a lot of these ancient knowledge, and you went up the bridge, and you are here in present time, and a lot of people are kind of in that layer of unconsciousness,
right.
so it's like it's hard to attribute where that comes from
But
you know
I'm in present time not because of Scientology, and
no, I
certainly
understand that.
not because of going up the bridge, because that actually takes you out of present time. That's my
Right.
opinion.
Well,
That's my
exactly. It makes you susceptible to hypnosis and brainwashing. And gee, I don't know, some of you internet theorists, wouldn't that be an interesting way? Like, so if MK Ultra came in, and like Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff and all these guys were at CC, recruited by Janice's mom, which I see you did that interview with her, who started CC to kind of do that sort of thing, and they got
right.
infiltrated. What if they were like, wow, okay, so you make people susceptible to our brainwashing? Okay, keep going. Nothing to see here. It's sort of, if there is a conspiracy there, it seems like that could be kind of part of it. Like when Scientology switched, and I know there's a lot of Stanford Research Institute, and even all the people that left. So I kind of like some of that stuff because it's my history. it's how I grew up.
There you go. It's your history. I like that. All right, JB808 says hi to Sophie, and Sophie says Y2 Watcher Rib Guy, Buttercup, Kelly. Hi there, lovelies. So I'm sure she's saying hi to everyone. It's just those are people she meant. Um, Afila, hi Tori and Dylan, hi all. Sophie says JB808, good evening, and alligators. Yeah, hi alligators. I'm glad you're here too.
Right.
Yeah, Connie B says caught alive earlier once. Hey Tori. Hey mods and chat. Hey Sophie. All right. And then pretty much these are all like everybody saying hi. The Elk of Antioch says, Dylan and Tori, did either of you have a favorite sci-fi book or LRH or anyone else? Me, no, I don't like sci-fi.
Um, uh, so this is kind of interesting. I when I was a kid, I was outdoors all the time. I would like hang out in parks and like shag balls for softball teams and hang around the basketball court and play pickup games and like, oh, you need an extra guy? I'm your guy. And it's probably because my dad was kind of doing his own thing and sort of selfish and, sort of it's when you're told you're an adult in a small body. My dad told me at like, what was it, 11, 12? He's like, you can do anything you want, just don't do anything you don't have a license for. And that was it. And he'd leave me alone for 14
That's
hours a
pretty
day.
good. That's pretty good.
Yes. No, it's not. I have kids. And no, it's not.
It's not?
Our My job as a parent is to create a safe space for my child to be able to get through his developmental stages. And for
Oh,
me to find those times to have a moment to share knowledge that I have gained in order to help him have the tools to resolve his conflict and
okay.
not feel bad about going down the wrong avenue or not
Right.
feel like you don't just set your kid free and say, hey, you're free. I mean, sure. What kid wouldn't want that? I wanted somebody to pay attention to me as a child. I wanted someone to show me love and consistency and to
Yeah, I
communicate
had
with
that,
me.
so
Right.
that was a good thing. You're right.
So yeah, I mean, when you go and there again, it's like can I blame it all on a person who chose faith over family? Sure, if I want to like live in that and let that own me for the rest of my life. But at one point I have to forgive that person. And that doesn't mean that I say what they do is okay. It absolutely fucking isn't. And if you
No,
show up at my door unannounced, I might punch you or hurt you. Not you, but those people. Um, because it's my right. The only way you can reach out is in a way that would make sense to heal. And I don't condone their actions, but I release myself from them.
right.
And it's hard. That's sometimes jumping into a black abyss. And I don't know if there's a bottom, but I know that's better than tethering myself to somebody else's fantasy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's hard. And that's where I think a lot of the disappointment with this group that, like that put themselves out on YouTube is um you can't just bleed on everybody and throw up all over the place and expect everybody to be like, this is great. We have to understand that we all at one point are going to have to accept and move on and forgive. And sure, it's okay to be angry, but
Right,
it's not okay to make that the like your existence
right.
because you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Let them do that. Let them be
Oh,
those
wait
people.
a second, I'm gonna start crying. No.
Right. But it's there's a lot of ways. Denial just isn't like angry and like there's a lot of ways that people deal with stuff that's overwhelming. And until you're ready to deal with that, there's no wrong or right, and
No.
there's no path that's one path. It's like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
Everybody's healing journey is different. And in an ideal world, we would all have like a therapist on call. We would have a whole support structure of advocates and peers behind us that support us and understand. But in the real world, most of us isolate, we keep ourselves alone, and we come to these places and we try to relate. I'm talking to you because you're a very good friend of mine, and I speak to you not on the YouTubes.
Right.
But I don't mind speaking to you on the YouTubes because I think this is part of the healing journey too. It's not to wallow in your grief and your sorrow.
No,
It's to now, like, let's make new shared memories,
right,
and we're joined because of our shared memories that have caused us trauma and fear and anxiety. Well,
right.
now we can kind of redefine those neural pathways.
Yes.
Those are hard. Once you've grooved some of those in, I don't know that we can just abandon them,
No, I
but
don't
we
think you
we
can.
might be able
I
to
think,
redefine them, or find our triggers before we're like balls deep in it,
but
you
that's the
know?
thing that I say. If you read books, like I was on OT7 and it wasn't working for 7 years. So I started going to bookstores and looking at self improvement and religions and
Mhm.
philosophy. And I would just take out a book. I'd like a title, I'd pull it out, start reading, and I'd go, I like this, and I'd buy it. And my husband would always say, is this another one of your top secret, your bookstore things? And I'd say, yeah, it is. And it was like every time I read a book, I swear to God, it was like stripping off. I didn't know it, but I think it was just like stripping off mind control because it was like putting in truth and taking away bullshit. Like one of them, for example, they said, write down 50, and I may have already told you this, but these guys might not have heard it. They said, write down 50 of the people that you respect the most. So I did. I got out a notebook and I wrote down my 50 people that I respected the most, Martin
Right.
Luther King and, different people and authors and musicians and all kinds of stuff. And at the end, I mean, this was a stunning shock for me. Not one of them was a Scientologist. Not
Hmm.
one.
Right.
And that was a big wake up call for me. It was like, wow. I mean, there's a whole world out there. That's why I sent my son to Europe. It was like I needed him to get away from LA, away from Scientology, and realize there is a whole world out here. And, that's different than the Scientology thing. This is when we were
Right.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's way to trust your instincts.
Yeah, books are very healing, and it's like having it isn't a therapist, but it's your next best thing. You know what I mean? If you can't for any reason get to a therapist, books are really good. They can really help you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like I say, in an ideal world, sure, we could all afford, a therapist. Um, but that's where, if you I think it's the idea of, and we were talking about this a little earlier, of like becoming or accepting that you have something to overcome, and you have something to survive from.
Right.
Because, like, and it's weird when you talk to some people, like, some people don't like the word survivor. Some people don't like the word, like, it's really interesting. It's like, if we're all trying to recover from something that hurt us or stunted us or caused us to, you know, react to normal world or whatever the world is throwing at us, and in a way that comes from our trauma, not from us being right here, then um we have to deal with that, and we have to acknowledge that, or we have to, like, try to figure out what is causing that. And a lot of times, even with therapy, they're like, well, you should find a peer group, right? Like, you should find, like, Alcoholics Anonymous, Weight Watchers, like, these are a pair of, like, you have this thing that you said, okay, this affects me. And you can go to a therapist and they're like, okay, well, we pretty much figured out that you have this and this and that, and this is kind of how you need to do it. You're like, okay, cool. And then you go home and you're like, God, I hope I can do that. And they're like, well, you need a peer group to remind and to give, like, daily. That's why people do daily affirmations. That's why people do. It's like we're combating these neural pathways that were maybe subtly just burnt into us.
Mm.
That it's easy, because humans are habitual. It's easy to fall back into those neural pathways without even realizing it,
Yeah.
until you start saying, wait a minute. Either, like, what I remember doing was, I would be running to practice or something, and the world would just get brighter, and I'd be like, whoa, this is how I want to live.
Right.
And then 3 weeks later, it'd be like, oh, the world's getting brighter again. And I'm like, whoa, this is, and I didn't even and pretty soon I was like, oh, okay, this bothers me in a way that I don't understand. This is one of my triggers or whatever words, like as humans, we like to, put precise meaning on our voices. And we all have this. So right now, the nomenclature in mental health is like narcissist, trauma response, trauma, like all these. So it's that trigger that you start to recognize. And that's how you
I
can
don't
start
agree with that
to
judge
forgive.
that said the thing about Survivor. I just want to say this before I forget it. But
What's that?
that judge came out and he said, no, I'm not going to call these people who were. I don't know if I can say it on here, but you know what I mean. They were the whatever, SA,
Okay. Right.
right? And they
Right.
can't say they're survivors now. It's some other bullshit term, but they are survivors. If
Well,
they
and
if
we're picking nits. Like we're trying to take this overwhelming emotion and confine it into one little word.
right,
And
right,
that who's to say that the blue, my name blue is not purple for you, or that's more purple for me and less blue, or
mhm,
like it's again, it's perception versus perspective. And
right.
if we only look at things through our perception, well, then we're going to find fault in everybody else's perception because we're lacking perspective.
Yeah, true.
So we have to take or either be comfortable enough in our perception to where it's not a big defense mechanism for our ego and start to look outside and say, oh, wait, I see where philosophy is coming from. Oh, I get where power lies to paralyze is coming from. Oh, I
Mhm,
see what one love is coming. And now I can say, and I might not conceptually understand all their feelings and emotional react, but if I pay attention, I can gain perspective of what their perception is.
right,
And that helps me with my perception and it helps me navigate a little bit through life. And is that easy to do all the time? No. I
no.
fail at it a lot. I'm not super great at it. I don't know how to people. I don't know how to people. I'm not good. And I don't know that I want to learn. I don't want to have superficial
You already
conversations.
have it, so forget it,
No, I
that
want to have but that's what I'm saying. Like, I want to have even in this space. So let's take YouTube. And it's like a lot of people are like, okay, this is where people just barf all over and their grief and they want money or they're grifting or they're this and that. I don't want to have a superficial conversation. I want to have a deep conversation. I want to talk about things it doesn't mean then I want to be invited over for a barbecue and we got to talk on the phone every day. My idea of a casual conversation is talking about something that has meaning to both of us
right.
and we can go as deep as we want to on it. And then we can not speak again for months and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's not I don't now need you to pay attention to me to feed me something that I'm can give myself.
No, I hear you.
So I think that's what more of this space would be like. I would look at it as like we talked. I was like, it'd be cool to have kind of like a panel, like be able to be on, talk about stuff, and then invite people from the audience up to talk. And then like, okay, well, cool. If you have something to say in a bit, come back up. But I'm gonna tuck you down in the chat, and then I'm gonna bring this person up, and then you have this instead of this grief pity party, now we're talking and going down things that both have meaning to us. And if it's our healing journey or our trauma, and my job is to listen and let you take off and land your plane, then that's my job then. And if I think that's how I see it more than like reporting on the drama or being the drama or reacting to the inappropriate behavior that causes more drama and strengthening divides and calling people out. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's all kind of, I think it makes people kind of want to not be around a little bit.
I think so too. I do. I'll tell you one thing I wanted to tell you, and I don't know, you probably didn't see it, but it was years ago. I was in the cult and I was watching Oprah, and she had on this lady who's a husband and wife whose daughter had been captured and chopped to bits, and they found the guy and he's in prison, right? So they're telling
Right.
their story. I mean, it's just a horrifying story, right?
Right. Wow.
But
Yeah.
they looked so good, And I thought, what's the deal? And the mom said, we were so traumatized by all of this. And we were so angry at this guy that he would do that to our daughter, that we were
Right.
just living in anger and fear and upset and,
Right.
just like day and night. And she finally said to her husband, you know what? We have to go and forgive him. That's what we have to
Mm.
do. We have to. We have to get on a higher plane. And
Right.
so they went to the prison and they forgave the guy,
Wow.
which obviously that's incredible in itself. And then now they're giving speeches around the world. People are
Right.
flying them in to talk to other people because we all have trauma. And it's like,
Right. And
they're
now
just,
are they profiting off of it?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't care. If they
Well,
are,
and it's like, you're right.
huh?
No, I think that's awesome. It's interesting. That's an interesting perspective because I remember as a kid hearing about how the Indians did that, or at least that's what I was told.
Yeah,
Um, and you would write a letter or you would write something and then float it down the river or burn it and like, and that was your way of,
right.
maybe dealing with people that had passed that you were trying
Like
to make
letting
amends
it
with.
go.
Right, right, right.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know that
I know it's hard.
that's a
It's a
tough
hard
one.
one. She
Like if
said
that,
it took them a long time to get there.
eh, that's taking it to a pretty literal level. I would write the letter maybe and and not go to talk to him personally because I don't know that, like, it's that weird thing of forgiveness, right? Like if somebody was violated in such a way that is going to affect them for the rest of their lives, I don't know if that I don't know that I would need to forgive them personally. I think,
It didn't happen to you, so you don't know what you would do.
yeah, no,
But
I'm
I'm just
talking about
saying,
my trauma, right? Um,
but this happened to them, and they said we have to. We are just living, breathing hatred, all day, and that's not helping us as a marriage and our lives, and we're unhappy. And they had to really face like this isn't working. You know
right.
what I mean? All right.
I
Well,
guess
what?
if you're stuck in anger and that um rage, sure. I mean, I think after that is usually acceptance and then forgiveness. So I would be okay with accepting that, that's hard. I don't know that there's a finality to, and that's probably why they're going
Oh
around
no,
talking
there
to
isn't.
other people, right?
Yeah, and she
Um,
recognized that they both
yeah,
did. There's no finality to it. I mean, it's
yeah.
a
It's
very
okay whenever that comes in and is overwhelming. Hopefully you're just in a safe space,
mhm.
like, or you have people around you, that becomes true. I think that's that's the thing that we're trying to figure out now, right? Is like, how do you deal with something that's going to affect you? Do you always keep an entourage around just in case? What if you're caught all by yourself and you can't deal with the trauma? Like, that's hard right now. When we acknowledge like our mind, body, and spirit, right? When we acknowledge this mind, this like internal computer that a lot of people at one point just gave permission to keep them safe. It now is just like, I supersede and override everything.
Right.
And it's like, for me, I'm like, I'd rather lead with my heart and let my supercomputer help me fact check and back stuff up. But I'm
Right.
never going to let it take lead
No.
because that's when the ego kind of takes over and then your past becomes your future and
Yeah.
you bypass the present, which is a
Yeah.
gift. Right.
I
So,
I had an interesting thing happen with Graham, right? Graham
yeah,
Barry.
Granberry. Sure.
Yeah, he's an
Mm.
attorney that's fought the church for years, for anybody who doesn't know him. But Aaron, I think about a year ago, had written some shit on his site about against Graham. And I was like, God, that's weird because Graham has helped so many people. I mean, he's really been invaluable. I love him. And so I was sort of like, that's weird. And so now Aaron came here to do that protest with a bunch of people. People flew in. We had that protest and he got
Mm.
arrested. And
Oh,
then
right, right. Yep. Yep.
the next thing I see is Graham got him out of the sheriff's office. And
Mm-hmm.
I know Graham. So I call him up and I go, Graham, I got to get this straight. I mean, what happened? Aaron had said all that shit about you, and now you went and helped him. And he
Right.
said, well, Tori, I live with two principles. He said, one is forgiveness, and the
Mhm.
other one is do the right thing. And I never forgot it. I thought, what a wonderful thing. I mean, that's
Right.
really
And
good
it
principles.
does, it's like it's that idea is like you do what your morals dictate, and it's not necessarily to appease the person that you're helping. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
And absolutely, yeah.
Right.
I saw all that go down. That was
Yeah.
crazy. That was
But I loved hearing
that
that.
was
I
quite
thought, oh,
lovely.
thank you. It was really good.
Yeah,
He's
there's
a
some stand-up people. Yeah, there's some really good stand-up people for sure.
Yes, exactly. Now let me check and see if I've missed anything. Comment. I just saw a Facebook post of a longtime Scientologist promoting the PTSSP course because
Mm.
it is essential for all Scientologists. Yeah, now
I
they have
remember
to.
when that came out, the PTSSP
Me
course,
too.
and
Me
it
too.
became mandatory. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that, do you remember the end phenomenon of like to pass the course, what you had to go out in the world and you had to go out and spot an SP and handle them or try to, like it was crazy. Yeah,
Well,
my
I was there with
father.
the earlier PTSSP course, and then that one came out, and I went to lunch with my best friend who's still in,
Uh-huh.
and Kathy Yachty, who's dead, she died. And we went to lunch, and I had just watched Martha Stewart on. She's the cooking lady, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'd watched her on TV, and it was actually a good show. So I bring it up, and they both, I swear to God, it was like a line was drawn on the table and they just stopped talking to me. And they were talking to each other. And I could tell they didn't,
They
I had
spotted the
heard,
SP.
yeah. Well, Scientology didn't like Martha Stewart. They thought she was a 1-1.
Oh, I
And
gotcha.
so
Okay.
because I liked her, it was like, okay, then she's 1-1 too. Okay, we're not going to talk to her. And it was
Right.
just, these are like my dear friends. It was like unbelievable for me. This was right towards the end of my waking up. And I was like, what the fuck is this? It's like, these are my friends. But
Right.
that was because of that course, because you had to be able to spot anybody at any time, any tone.
I watched my dad and uncle both go from like semi-compassionate people to
Right.
not anymore. Like that was something. Luckily I got shipped off to the Sea Org pretty close to after that, so I never had to do it. Um, but yeah, that was pretty crazy to watch them just get it, like they became fanatical.
Yeah.
That was a way to put that, like, lead with fear.
Yeah.
There's all these people that are SPs and PTS all everywhere. There's potential trouble. You're PTS to the middle class. You're this, da, 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 da. Handle this person. They're out ethics. This is, it's like it was all these. It was crazy, and it's the big. That's when, oh, not the same time, but that's when like KSW was like the first thing you read in every check sheet.
Right.
And it was just like this boom. It's like a rudiment. Like every time it's just conditioning, conditioning, conditioning.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's done with um ill intent. It's done to deceive, not under the guise of freeing you.
Right.
It's interesting. So yeah, I agree. I agree.
Okay. Now here's a question from the Journey 2020. What happened to the Scientology of California? During my research, it just disappeared. Do you
It
know?
got dissolved because that was so when Larry Wollersheim won, they went into arbitration and appeals, but that's like pretty much date coincident. That's when all the new corporations got
Uh,
formed.
that's right, they
And
did.
so, right. So all of it, and it was subtle. It wasn't like this big announcement. Like, that's what's
No,
weird. If you have a congregation and your church floods or you're under attack, you're going to rally the troops. Instead, they were like, well, we got to deceive all these people and we got to deceive the government and we got to deceive. So we're going to have to, like, oh, I know. We'll pay for lawyers. You want to pay for the people that know how to manipulate words and misinterpret and interpret only for one device? well, you hire lawyers, and the more you pay, the better you get. So, yeah, that's
But the
pretty.
amazing thing is a lot of their attorneys quit. They're there
Well, of
for a
course,
while.
I mean, you're dealing with
And
somebody psychotic,
I
so
know.
it's it's and it's like an organization that's psychotic.
Yeah.
And now I know that like Norman Starkey passed away recently.
He
Uh,
did?
well, it was last year, right? Or was it the year before?
I don't know. I didn't know he passed
Um,
away.
yeah, I'm almost positive. Maybe I
He
wasn't
probably did.
supposed to say anything. But he was the last trustee for like there was actual LRH signatures that he was
Oh,
supposed to
that's
be.
right.
So now he's free to do whatever he wants. It's like the whole idea. Like here's a subtle thing in Scientology. And I see this all the time in chats and stuff like that. Who's going to be the next leader of Scientology?
I know. They say it all the time.
Well, but think about that. It doesn't matter. It's such an irrelevant, it's such a funny question
I know.
because there was never supposed to be a leader.
No.
And during this reorg, that position was manufactured because that was never going to be the way Scientology was run. It was
Right.
never set up. And everybody's like, it shows how like brainwashed or how everybody was kind of set up to be lemmings, me included. Like another subtle thing is when you're on a post in the Sea Org, you don't say, "Hi, I'm Tori." You say, "Hi, I'm your auditor." And when you talk to other staff members, they say, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm the COPE officer, CMOCW."
I think that's a Sea Org thing because I
That's
do
what I'm
know
saying, right?
that is
Well, that's what
100%
we're talking about. Yeah.
still to this day. Now, we're not only talking about the Sea Org because I wasn't Sea
We're
Org.
talking about the CS Church of Scientology California and
Oh,
how it
okay.
was.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm just saying
But I'm
yeah.
just saying, like for me, you said you would say how you wouldn't say hi, I'm Tori, I'm your auditor, and I would always say hi, I'm Tori. You know,
I was trying to be inclusive, Tori, with you. I was trying to be like,
thank
if
you,
you were in the
Dylan.
Sea Org, you would call yourself your post title. I didn't mean you individually. I meant like
Okay,
the royal we.
I gotcha. The
Um,
royal we.
so and that's how you keep like when you're doing the subtle changes and you're getting rid of like wouldn't it if you're like, hey, we have to dissolve Church of CSC, and now it's CSI, everybody would be like, well, why are you doing what happened? It's like, oh, well, we lost that case and we actually gave him more than one thin dime. We gave him, 800 million dimes or whatever. And that's how you keep people like submissive and you keep them ready and open to be whatever the next thing you're putting out there is what they're going to fully believe. Here's the next flap. Go handle it.
Right.
Because your job and you are this post title.
Right.
It's like WDCs. Like even in the X community, there's that conditioning shows like when everybody says, okay, what was Mike Winder? Oh, he was WDC OSA. But that isn't even a real thing. That's just a title. Right? This is where there was never supposed to be a leader. That post title belongs in CMON. That person that runs that post title that sends out emails that are all, oh my God, it's WDC, oh crap, is a person in a department in CMON. They're not even the CO. They're not even like in a perfect world, the way it was set up. That's what would be monitoring and observing and executing the intentions of LRH would be like their messenger orgs and those. So they would be running everything under the guise of WDC, under the guy. And then you have your layers, you have your IGs above those guys. So
Right.
they were in charge of ethics, tech, and admin, right? Originally. And then you had the WDCs, and then you had CMON, and then you had the CMO Cont units. And so it was all these people just ready to be, and that's how it was supposed to. It's like the Wizard of Oz, right? All these strings, and there's like at one point nobody behind there. It's just every buttons are being pushed, and it's like fear the wizard, like that's what it was supposed to be. So when David took over, that shows some knowledge that either he didn't believe any of it. It's like you hear stories like you were talking about Tom DeVock. I think he was talking semi recently or at one point about OT8 and the release, and how it was like all these people that were of a certain case level could only, and they all knew David wasn't of that. Oh no, it was in Jesse Prince's book. It was in Jesse Prince's book where he's like, we're all getting together trying to figure out this, maiden and how we're going to do OT8 and Pat Broker, and David's right there, and he's not OT, but he's like checking out the material. So it shows that level of like, I don't know. It's interesting. Like Scientology is
Shows that
definitely,
level of what? You finish that
well,
sentence.
like not like premeditation, I guess, but it's or ultimate fanaticism.
Yeah,
It's like you imbue yourself with this sense of self-righteousness as like David Miscavige. And you think that you're now everything you think and do, you're like channeling LRH. So
see, I
everything you
didn't
do is
have that
right.
at all.
Huh?
But that's because of epilepsy. That's the only
Right.
reason. I
Right.
was
Right.
like, so like, fuck these guys. So when Miscavige came out with this thing, the Berlin Wall went down because we released OT8.
Right. Right. Yeah, you got to find something, right?
I mean, I was like, are you serious? You know,
Well,
and
so
then
here
when my
Alligator's asking a question. It says, without a leader, do you think that Scientology would implode? In the 80s, no. Now, yes. 100% would implode.
without a leader, what is it?
Without a leader, do you think that Scientology would implode? And because it's been changed so much that it's only meant to facilitate one person now. So there's no end game, right? Like he's not like, well, I'm going to groom this person. And even like now, I bet David Miscavige right now is feeling the most free and happiest he's ever felt, besides the little nuances of all these other people, because there's nobody around that remembers the 80s or the 70s, and all those people are in hospice care or sitting out in the hacienda that were on the ship with, like, they're all everybody's like, as soon as all those people drop their body, he has a whole new group of people
Yeah.
that he can tell whatever the fuck he wants, and all these new books that have had all the crap taken out of them, well, that's source now.
You're right.
Because none of the people that were there that knew what the original books were can be like, wait a minute, that's off policy. It's like, you are the source. And it's like, imagine living in that turmoil. You'll never be LRH, but you have to like worship him while you live as second your whole life. Like that's a sad little child. Like that's terrible. I mean, it's purgatory, and he deserves it. So there you go.
Sophie says there are many breakaway groups that splintered off Scientology: Landmark, C.S.T, Nexium, The Process, Avatar, and so many more.
Yeah.
And then she said, question, why did they get rid of the missions? I would have thought that was the best way to recruit. I agree. I mean, that was really stupid. I to this day, I don't get it. Do you know?
What was the last part of that?
It's like, why did they get rid of the missions? And she said, I would have thought that was the best way to recruit, and it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, so the problem with the mission network is that you had franchise holders, and they were making money, and they were making some, like the Los Gatos mission, the Santa Clara mission. They were making as much or more than a Class 4 org was.
Right.
And Scientology didn't have control over that.
Right.
Imagine having an antisocial personality church over your head that wants all the control all the time. Right. Like, so when the whole power struggle happened, That was
Right.
kind of one of, like, DM's the one that disbanded the mission network. That wasn't done under LRH. Like, that was done under DM, and that was done as, and that's when the orgs used to be class 4 orgs. So they were more, they could only go up to class 4. They could only train. And then everything else had to go to AO, ASHO,
LAO.
flag, like, yeah, exactly. Any bigger orgs. But then they started class 5 orgs, because when the mission network bailed, right? They start Way to Happiness,
Yeah.
Association for Better Living Through Education, the World Institute of Scientology, executives. So, like, there's all these little front groups, and they thought that would just subvert right into what the mission network was doing. But you read old posts from, like, Arnie Lerma and, like, people that were around in the 70s, and like, it was more free spirited, and even what Janice's mom started. I'm not saying she's some evil maniacal mastermind. I think she was probably one of the most charismatic people around, and
She was
she,
totally loved by
right,
everyone.
exactly. And so it's like, and that made CC, that made a place where you could attract those kind of people. So they're looking for places
Right.
to, and CC is not a good example because that was around before the mission network was disbanded. But they had to then lean on CCHR is a good example, right? So they're putting all these places out, like all these groups. Well, you appeal to everybody who has a kid on Ritalin, right? Like, they can all be like, "Oh, my kid didn't deserve that," and CCHRs are going, "Yeah, read an LRH book." It's like, it's sort of, that's how they subverted the mission network, and so
And the wise group.
it was for money, basically. That's what
Yeah.
it was. It was 100% for money.
But
Right.
Jesse told me originally the big money thing was from Hubbard. He said Hubbard said, that's fucking it. And this was in the 70s. Jesse told
Right.
me that Hubbard found out how much money the orgs were making and missions. And he
Right.
said, no, no, no. I want $1 million a week. I want it in cash. That's how
Right.
Miscavige took over. Because I asked Jesse when I left, I said, how did Matt Miscavige take over? I don't get it. I was at the event, and it was like supposed to
Oh, the
be
death event?
the where Pat and Annie, when he died, and Pat and
Right,
Annie
right. Yeah,
both
the
were
death
going to
event.
take
Yeah, I was
over,
at Flag. Right.
and then whoosh, Miscavige came over, and everybody, I was like, who the fuck is that? And they were like, don't ask, don't tell. Now that started that night. Don't ask, don't tell, don't say anything,
Right.
just go along.
Well, yeah.
But Jesse said Hubbard said I want $1 million a month,
Right,
and
right.
Miscavige and Pat and some other people were going to Las Vegas to party. Then
Right.
they'd go over to the ranch, give him the money, and come back. So that's how he got it. He said to them, "Look, here's the deal. I'm going to put you in prison for the rest of your life because you transferred all that money across state lines and never reported it. So either you get the fuck out of here or I'm putting you in prison." And that's what Jesse told me. That's how he took over.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty close.
Well, what else is it?
Well, so right prior to that, DM was the executive director for Author Services International. And he replaced himself on that post with another person that was on his. So he was, at that point, he was kind of getting feeling people out that would be on his side or who would be against him. And so he
Right.
started this thing called the SU. And the special unit was started. I don't know if it was a garrison mission or if it was a mission or if it was just done through CMO Int kind of thing. And he became the liaison between the brokers, because a lot of people have told these stories about, like, I know Janice has told a few stories. Like, there were the messengers that were around at that time. It was like, okay, who's going to La Quinta? And Pat and Annie were chosen mostly, I think, because of Annie. I don't totally remember the story. But a lot of people were like, yeah, we want to, like, um, Sterling's mom and Jenna's mom, they wanted to they were too important on lines, on like management lines. So they kind of all stayed. So now there was this divide. There were these, and there was a few other people out in La Quinta, like Sarge and a few other messengers that I don't think speak out or want to be talked about
Who?
too much. Huh?
Who doesn't want to be talked about?
Well, the people that I'm not going to talk about.
Oh, I thought you said
the
you were
other,
the
so there was a few other people besides just the brokers there,
okay.
and so those lines were controlled through DM. Everything that went to from CSI or anything like that went through DM to La Quinta, and that's where broker, and that's where the money thing came, and that's where they would meet up, and it wasn't necessarily that they would both go. My understanding is that they would meet up, the money would be exchanged, information and comm would be given from LRH as like orders of the day or that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and then DM would bring that back. So he basically made himself the filter
Right.
of what was given and what was received. And so he would have been one of the first people that knew when LRH passed or however that death event happened. No, Chuck Beatty was in ASI for a little while, but then he was on the RPF for a long time during all this. That's Kelly. I just answered Kelly. I think you're about an hour behind on the comments.
I am.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But
Tori's giving us history and content. Ain't we lucky to be listening to the discussion? That's actually Dylan right now. I'm not behind. The last one that
oh, you're
posted
there. Okay, yeah,
YT
you're just
Watcher saying yep.
yep, you
And Chuck Beatty, yeah. Do you mean
yeah,
Chuck Beatty?
you.
No. So go on, because your thing is good. I'm interested.
So then there was a power struggle, and hey, Mitch.
Oh, hi,
And
Mitch.
once the power struggle kind of happened, that's where the divide came, right? And then another wave of people left.
Right.
So there were like, that's like Vicky Asnaran and a few people like that kind of got pushed out at that time. And that's when I believe well, that was like Lisa McPherson after that. But yeah, a lot of the super int execs, like that's when there's a big divide. And there was a mass exodus. So as that all
They took
happened,
the money away from the missions. That's what happened. That's
well,
what
and because there were mission holders were able to have 3 or 4 different missions.
I
So
know.
they were raking in the money.
They were raking in the
And
money.
they were getting per their agreement, which I'm not 100% sure about. Um, they were getting a good chunk of the money. They were only having to give Scientology like what Scientology probably considered not their fair share. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they wanted it all. They think that they kind of thought, I believe that they could just close that all down. Everybody would rush over to the orgs and give Scientology all their money. And that was super far from the case because people liked that sense of community. Like people could go somewhere and it was like you see now a little bit. Like there was people going there with their kids. And that to me rings true. When I see people at the Houston org and I see a mom and a dad with a couple kids, yeah, I remember that. I remember that was me. That's how you did it in the missions. And then when that got canceled, there was a big bubble or bump, like where people left. It was the same when the Dianeticists, where they're like, I'm not going to be in a religion. This is a philosophy of the mind. Screw that shit. And then they're like, no, you can still be a Buddhist and do Scientology. It's like an enhancement. It's like, no, I don't think so.
And I remember Ed Mooney had
There
a
you go.
mission in Chicago, and I was here on L. Ron Hubbard Way, and he was a friend of mine, and he came walking across the street, and he looked awful. And I really didn't know anything about the mission holders conference, except it was a big flap and a
Right.
bunch of shit happened, but I didn't know exactly. And I said, Ed, what's going on? And he goes, it's over. And I said, what do you mean it's over? And I mean, this was a business for him. That was the
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
Originally, it was a business. And he
Right.
said, this was a business for me. And that was my work. And he said, now we have to report everything up to RTC.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're in the
You
Sea
have to
Org.
buy the copyrights. We
Yeah,
have
and
to
we have to
rent
order.
them or
They
lease.
tell us how many books we have to sell a week and shit. He
Right.
said, I'm done. He said, I'm not
They had to
doing that.
buy their whole bookstores. Like that
All
was
right.
like and it wasn't like you could pick and choose and be like, I only need 2 Dianetics books. They're like, you're getting 2 cases.
No, I
It's
know
like,
that,
holy shit.
but then they gave him orders on what they had to sell also.
Right.
It's like you had to
Yeah.
buy the shit, and then they ordered you
And
what
they
to
get no
sell.
money anymore. Like if Rib Guy said that he thinks they were paying 12% up lines. So as a
Wow.
mission holder, you're making money. But then
Yeah,
that swaps and you may be only getting 12%. Or what was FSM commission at the time? 15 or 13,
it
like
went
10?
between 10 and 15,
Right,
sometimes
right.
20, if it, depended.
So there you go. And it became about regging and it became less about well done auditing hours and value of services delivered and more about gross income.
And I used to talk to the execs about this because I'd say they'd be upset because I was like, I would volunteer and they'd say, we need more volunteers. And I'd say, they're not going to volunteer. You guys have created your own monster of the only people that are important are the people with money. So
Right.
everybody, whether it's Joe Schmo, who's never going to make enough money to be a patron meritorious, but because of all the how much
Mm,
you have the red carpet treatment for the money, that's all anybody wants to do is make money now. They're not going to
right.
volunteer. Forget it.
And that's another subtle thing that was implemented that goes kind of and this is where the susceptibility is, right? Like I remember from the youngest age that I can remember the concept of exchange and how it relates to Scientology
Sure.
and everything in my life. And then the IAS comes out
Right.
and it's like so out of exchange. You get a
Right.
card for you don't get anything, you get a card. Like it's so and they expect you to just go with it,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, oh, and if you donate all this money, you get a trophy. It's like when I was in Denver, I walked into the Denver org and they gave me a full tour. They gave me CDs of the IRS event, The War is Over. And I remember them when during the tour they were like, this is zebra wood from South Africa and the sauna. And it was all about mest. It was all about the beautiful things that were around. And
Right.
it's like, wow. So you now pay to this group to get
Right.
a membership card and it's all about the shiny little and that's the exact opposite of not that what I learned was right, but it was the opposite of what I learned as a kid.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I
Right.
mean, I
So
remember I was there when Miscavige announced the IAS thing. I was at the event. It was between Asho and what do they call that thing? It's between
the
Asho and
birthday game.
no. I mean, I'm just talking about the space. I can't remember what it's called. It's
L. Ron
like
Hubbard
right.
Way. What?
No, it's on L. Ron Hubbard Way, but it's a certain space. But anyway,
Oh.
we had to go there. They announced it. I went across the street. I said, "Where's IAS?" And they said, "It's across the street." So I went across the street. And I said, "Okay, I'm a Hazy member."
Oh, right. I
Hazy
forgot
members
about
were
Haji.
lifetime Hubbard Association of Scientology International.
Right,
And
right.
this old lady's sitting there and she goes like this. She goes, "You're an auditor, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Unbelievable." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "The only people giving us a problem are the auditors." And I said, "That's because it was drilled into our heads a million times. If it isn't in writing, it isn't true." That's what I asked her. Where is it in
Right,
writing about
right,
the
right.
IAS? And that's what
Right.
she said.
Yeah,
You're an
yeah. That's a
auditor,
good
right?
point.
Yeah. Because there's
Yep.
nothing in writing about it.
Exactly.
And that's a big, that's like huge flap.
Rusty
Oh,
says the missions were all managed by the Guardian's office till the GO got busted. They paid 10% to the GO. The 10% thing went back to the 1950s. You could do whatever you wanted as long as LRH got his 10. What bureau would that have been in the GO there, Rusty?
thank you, Mitch. That's right, Lebanon Hall. That's what I was
Oh,
trying to think.
Leb Hall. I lived in Leb Hall.
You live there?
Yeah, I lived in the 4th floor when I was in CMOXU.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's where that's where it was announced
Oh,
from.
I see. Oh, okay. In the bottom part.
Yeah,
Because otherwise it was just apartments or whatever.
it wasn't where you were living.
Yeah. An announcement in my room?
Amazing. All right, Sophie loves Denver. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Mitch, for explaining that. I couldn't remember the name of it. Alligator says, it is so hard to give a gift to my mother. She always has to give something back. At 74, she finally accepted that I pay for her cell phone. Well, see how long she will let me. Well, it's Mother's Day coming up. So if any of you have mothers, get them something. I mean, mothers like to get something.
Nice. Rusty
Rusty.
lived in Leb Hall on the 4th floor.
I lived in Leb Hall on the 4th floor in 77. Was that when you were there?
Oh gosh, no.
No.
I was there in the late 80s. Yeah.
Well, and Y2 Watcher says, Sophie, I bet you have seen more of the US than most of who lived here. It would be nice if people traveled more and saw different views, but don't want to start a political discussion. I agree. It's good to travel.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think any discussion, if it's deep and consensual, then it's a good discussion. Even politics is fun to talk about, like how much it's flipped and how much it changes and all the extra control and influence. I mean, that's a fun little thing to chat. It doesn't have, but I guess if you talk about anything and you only look at it through the filter of your viewpoint is right.
Right.
Well, then, yeah, it's going to be a cruddy topic, but if you're open to somebody else's perception or what they've experienced, then yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Sophie says, Y2 Watcher, not really. It's a massive place. I've been to LA and Denver. Oh, okay. But there are Americans who have been to more than
More of
New
New Zealand
Zealand
than me.
than
I
we.
almost went to New Zealand, but I
Really?
didn't have enough points.
You mean, to fly? Like,
No, to move there.
what do you mean you didn't have enough points?
Well, to move to New Zealand, correct me if I'm wrong. It's on a point system,
Huh?
and so they don't just let anybody move there. You have to pretty much qualify with enough points, meaning like, are you married? Do you have a job? How educated are you? All that kind of stuff. So I was going to move to Christchurch, with my my art professor moved there, and she still lives there, in fact. So, and I've played rugby. I played rugby in the Sea Org. We
Oh, that's
started a
right.
team and played. Yeah, so I've kind of played rugby all my life, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. I'd love to go to New Zealand myself. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. We had a funny thing at the Sandcastle. I was on OT7, and Sophie, you weren't here the other night, but I mentioned this, but I couldn't remember the name of. It's the natives in New Zealand. What are they called? Does
Maoris.
anybody know? Do you know, Dylan?
Yeah, Maoris. The,
Um,
the Maoris.
I guess.
Well,
We'll just,
you,
that's who
you
it was.
asked.
But anyway, this lady said that one of the natives, I always wanted to go to Africa and live in Africa. And my boyfriend from high school went there and ran the Peace Corps for 20 years while I was in the cult. So I always wanted to, kind of hang around some natives. And they said, "Oh, yeah, there's this guy from New Zealand that's one of the natives there." And I said, "Really? I want to meet him. How do I know who he is?" And they said, "Well, it's pretty easy. He's the only guy out there in a skirt."
Right. That's funny.
He was very nice, though. It was really fun talking to him. Oh, yeah, it is. Maori are the native New Zealand people. How do you say it, Dylan?
Maori.
Maori?
Yeah.
Okay, Maori. That's it. You had it. Good.
Okay. Where do I
After the
win?
missions came, this is from Rusty. After the missions came, the CMO management, LRH got the idea the missions were not sending public up to the orgs and making too much money. That's why the mission network got ripped up. Wow. All
Yeah.
about money.
I guess that's providing the LRH was, I guess that's probably the last hurrah for him,
Yeah.
because after that, um, DM kind of controlled all those lines. So
Yeah. That was a mess. You probably weren't around the finance police, right?
nope. But I read all about him doing missions and gathering stuff so they could be vetted and all that sort of stuff.
They
I
were.
did I did quite a few missions in the Sea Org. I probably did about 70-ish missions. So
Is that a lot?
yeah, I for me it was. I was on those lines, and it was pretty normal for a Sea Org member to have done, I don't know, 5 missions, maybe 6.
Oh, so 70 is a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. How'd you get to up to so many?
Well, my first post in the CMO was missionaire.
Um,
So I did a lot of missions.
that's fun though. You got to travel, right?
A lot of them were around Flag. Flag was its own little world. Like it running that, like that's um when I was there, the FLB, or the Flag Land Base, as an org, um was completely moved to LA and basically made into the CLO, or the Continental Liaison Office. Um and they were running everything, because at first everything was being run out of Florida, and then it kind of got switched to LA, and Flag became like the mecca. So there was only just a few people left at, like, running Flag, and it was
Right.
getting turned over. And then we were there as the CMO, dealing with all those Sea Org members.
Wow. All right. So now a couple things. Alligators prefers kiwis over kangaroos. Sophie says, Dylan, it's easier to get points if you have a job here and live outside of Auckland. So there you
Right. Yeah. No. And being married, and I mean, there's a bunch. I looked into it. I was at a university at the time, and it was close. I think I probably could have. I
pushed
should have
your
probably tried harder,
yeah,
but I didn't. So here I am,
that sounds
America.
fun. And
Yeah.
then One Love says Dylan got some points for knowing quote unquote moon
Maori.
Maui.
Maori.
Oh, he's writing Maori. Okay, I couldn't read it. Sorry.
No worries.
And One Love says, yes, it's quite hard for you Americans to pronounce it properly, but it's close enough. The Maori vowels are different. Yeah.
I used to practice with a Tongan team, a rugby team, in the
Ah,
summers. And yeah, I've known, and when you play rugby, you run into a lot of Kiwis and Aussies and Samoans and Tongans and English and Irish. So you deal with a lot of European, because that's their primary sport. Where here in America, it's football, basketball, that kind of crap. So
that's good.
yeah.
That's good. All right, here's a question from Alligators. Would you translate the books for your
Who
mission?
who would translate the books
Oh,
for your
who would? Who would translate the books for your mission?
what do you mean, like Sea Org mission? Or do you mean what mission? I'm not
I think she means Sea Org missions, and she's probably thinking you went to other countries and who would translate the books.
translate the
I'm just guessing. Alligator, you clarify it.
not super sure. Um yeah, you didn't have books on missions, but I don't not sure. Not sure about
They
books.
got really big on taking our money and making us translate Scientology books into other languages.
Right.
I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not doing it. And so I still have OT 9 and 9 to 11 paid for because my mother-in-law
You mean
they
like
had bought the package from Hubbard years ago.
right, right.
Yeah,
She said Spanish, French, and other. Are you talking about like the works of Dianetics and Scientology?
I think
Because
so.
that's not what a mission is. But
Oh, maybe explain what a mission is.
okay. Um, so based on LRH policy and the data series, a mission is fired under a few different um, criteria. Where in the different kinds of orgs, there's like service orgs, there's estates orgs, and then there's like management orgs. Um, the management orgs are set up to be their tech and their qual are like action and observation. So they go and use the data series to find out points, to pull strings, to find whys, and then they write orders, mission orders based on those, and they then send it to action where they go and fire missions to handle said evals or whys or even data gathering missions. So there's a ton of different missions, but they all go through Observation Bureau, who has people in it called programs ops, and they monitor their area that they're responsible for, and they check statistics. They're basically like an information gathering bureau, and then they
Right.
use data technology in order to handle that information basically. So and missions are then fired to physically take care of those with major targets, mission purposes, primary targets, operating targets, and you have to have compliance for all those, and mission financing. So yeah, I mean, you could be sent to another country, you could be sent to an org, you could be sent, locally. It just depends on what the mission was and who could be manned for it.
Okay, so I have a question. If you're sent to another country that speaks in a different language, of course, most of them speak English, but if they didn't,
Mm.
what do you do then?
Right. Um, if they so Alligator responded and says, I was in a mission, sorry for the confusion, I meant for the mission like mine, we had the books and everything in French. So that was done through Bridge Publications, um,
Oh,
and there was a translation unit. And yes, as Scientology expanded or went into new areas, they would get the book, and that would come up every year in some of the events. Like Dianetics was translated into 100 languages. It's like whoa. So yeah, I think there you go. We got a twofer
yeah,
on missions.
yeah. All right, well, that's good. We
Yeah,
learned
it's
a bunch about
gobbledygook. So you're using
mission.
LRH words to say how silly LRH stuff was.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
funny, Karina.
Hoobity-ga. It is. But it's interesting. It is one of the traps for cults is words, to getting people in because you don't know what other people are talking about, but you like the people. That's what happened to me. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I liked them. And I thought, okay, I don't care what they're doing. I want to be one of these people.
Well, there's where big league sales comes in, right? It's like when, as my purpose as a Scientologist, as a child, even if I was in that role, was to find somebody's ruin. And I had tools to do that. I had the Oxford capacity analysis. I had intro courses. I had all these tools to find somebody. And as soon as you found the ruin, well, you kind of, it's like straight out of, like, so would you say that you want to have your epilepsy dealt with? Like that's been something, and you've managed it now, but then like so you have this, some people it's obvious, some people it's not. And then once you find the ruin, your first thing is, well, Scientology can help you with that. Just sign up for this course or read this book. And then that's designed to entrap you. So by the time you're there and you're starting to believe this and getting a completely different wind from what you were supposed to get handled, it takes a while to be like, wait a minute, you never fixed what you said was my. So it's
But
like
see,
getting.
I never had anybody find a ruin on me ever. I read Dianetics 3 chapters, packed my bags, quit college, and hitchhiked from Chicago to LA. And
Right.
I wanted to be an auditor. That was it. So when I saw all these guys outside ASHO, and back in the old days, there were like 100 people that would stand outside and talk.
Body routers.
Huh?
Body routers.
No, these were just auditors just talking with each
Oh,
other.
okay.
They were on
Oh,
the
okay.
briefing
Okay.
course, and it was like after the course, and they were just talking with each other. And so I hitchhiked there. I saw Hubbard's pictures. I thought, I don't like that guy. I saw the SEAL guys in the military uniforms, and I'd been fighting the military since with the Vietnam War in the 60s. And I thought, I don't want to be with these guys. And they were super organized. And I thought, I'm not organized. I'm a hippie. This isn't going to work. And I called my friend.
There's your ruin.
How is
You're
that my
not
ruin?
organized. They're organized. I'm not organized. Bam. It doesn't have to be like a lifelong ruin. It just has to
No,
be
but
something
my
you have your
thing was I
attention on.
wanted to be an auditor. That was
Right.
it.
Gotcha.
And so my friend said, he said, what do you want to do here? And I said, I want to be an auditor. And he said, that's what all these people are that are outside of ASHO. They're all auditors. They're all training to be auditors. And I
Right.
said, really? And he said, yeah, let's go meet him. And then you'll see. And so that's what I mean by the words. Cause I mean, we walked up to listen to him, and it was like, I had no idea what they were talking about. They had, all this lingo and, all these words, and I didn't know what they were talking about, but they were.
Gobbledygook. That's what
I
they
know, but I didn't see it that way. I thought, well, I don't care what it is. I want to learn it. That was
Right.
it.
No, and there you go. You didn't really need a ruin because you
No,
were willing, you showed up willing and ready and able.
I
So
did. I did.
making
I
the
wanted to
able
be
more
an auditor.
able.
So
Right.
there was that. And I handled my own upset about it. Well, the guy helped me. He did. Because he said, oh, don't worry about the pictures. We don't like those either. And I said, well, what about these guys marching around in the military uniforms? Because remember, way back then in 69, they wore these real Navy uniforms.
Oh, I wore those. Yeah.
You
They
did?
still had them in the, yeah, oh, yeah. All through the 80s, they had military whites and Navy
Yeah,
Class
true.
A, and right, 100%.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I was like, no. But then when I met the auditors, I thought, okay, this is my tribe. I like these guys.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that was
no, it's clicky for sure. That's what a cult is.
yeah.
It's like that's we're the cool kids club. You wanna join? Oh wow, really? Yep. So
And look at all the levels you have to get. These guys are up here. I was like way down here.
right, right. Yep, it's set up. It's enticing if you have a need to have a place to fill, then it's a place it'll fill you up, I guess, with something.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Well, does anybody have any more questions for Dylan? Because we've been on for 2.5 hours.
I know. It's like our conversations, right? That's ex-Scientologists can talk. It's crazy. We could talk about nothing that's what I mean. Like this is what I think of as a casual conversation.
Yeah.
Like, and most people I've realized, like in the real world, it's like, oh, it's almost like good roads and good weather. That's and I just can't get my head around that. I can't,
You
I
think
don't,
this is like good roads and fair
no,
weather?
no, no, no. That's not what I said. I said this is what I look at, like this is the kind of conversation that I would be open to having with almost anyone.
Right.
Right? Like if somebody I meet at the gas station for a few minutes, we could talk about engines for 15
Right. I'm
minutes while
the
we
same.
fill up and go
That's
deep. Like remember in 50, like, and then never see that person again. I don't
right.
know how to do the um superficial, like good roads and good weather. Like, oh hey,
No.
how's the weather? Like you might as well be like, hey, I don't care and I'm not really paying attention to you. I'm just kind of letting you talk so I can speak. And I don't really care to like what's your name again? Like that's and it's like, dude, I've known you for like 3 months. Like, what do you mean? What's my name again? And not you, but
I mean,
I mean, that's how a lot of superficial conversations happen in this world. And for
yeah.
me, I don't really care to pay attention. I don't like it. I don't like doing that.
Yeah, I
And
don't like
people
it
don't like
either.
me not liking that. So it's
Yeah,
weird.
that I agree with you 1,000%. I'm like, not, it's, but I learned that early on when I was a young girl. I think I was like 14, and I got on a bus in Chicago, and I sat next to this guy that looked homeless, right? He
Mhm.
really was a mess. And I said, "What's up, man? Like what's your deal?" And he said, "What's my deal?" And I said, "Well, I mean, like, what happened in your life? I mean, you must have done something."
Tell me about everything. It's
Huh?
what? Tell me about your life. I
I
know
did.
exactly. People are right.
I
Yeah.
wanted to know what he did before he became homeless. And you know what he said? I worked for Ring. He said, "You're not going to believe it." I said, "Give me a shot. I'll let me try it." And he goes, "I worked for Ringling Brothers Circus." And I
Mm.
said, "Really?" And he had unbelievable stories. I mean, it was just amazing. And it was really my realization that anybody, you should always give somebody a chance because you never
Right.
know.
Right. Right. No,
You
and I
know.
think it's that conversation of like it's hard to and that's where perception and perspective kind of come in. If we are like, God, if somebody I remember talking to a therapist and being like, when somebody asked me like, oh, where's your family from, what's going on, and when I'd be like, well, my dad's in a cult, my mom is, and and it's like, and they don't care. They're like, oh, all right, well, see you, talk to you later. It's like, and the best advice I got was like, I forget how she worded it, but she was like, have that kind of superficial conversation, um, and be like, hey, if you ever, or be like, well, I've had some stuff. If you ever want to know more about me or whatever, let's have a cup of coffee and talk it out.
Right.
Or like, that kind of thing. Like, and I've noticed a lot of people aren't interested in that cup of coffee. And I'm not saying majority, I'm not trying to speak in generalities. I'm just saying that superficialness, people are very content with that and they don't want to sit down and actually invest and listen. A lot of people wait to talk and are thinking what they're going to say while somebody else instead of actually, understanding or listening to the other person. So,
Right.
and people don't, when you don't do that, it makes you kind of scary, especially as a guy.
I know.
So,
I used to always go to those parties with Spanky, and all these people knew me, and I couldn't
right,
remember their names, right?
right.
And they'd be like, "Tori, Tori." And my thing, I used to be married to Harold, and this started at our wedding where I said, "Look, this is a nightmare. I can't remember these people's names, but I've been on course with them for months. So you stick out your hand and say, 'Hi, I'm Harold.'" And they'll go, "Hi, I'm Dylan." And I'll be like, "Dylan." It worked great for 26 years, but now
Right,
I'm
right.
alone. And it was just a nightmare. My thing was I'd go like this, "Hi, I'm Tori." And they'd go, "We know who you are. You've been to
I
every
know
one of
you,
these
Tori, and
parties."
you're like, this is not helping. And
It
your
was
name is, you're like, what? Yeah, no. And
it
that's,
finally now they get it, but it was
right.
really very tricky for a few years. It really was.
And
But
I
we
even think
went to
embracing
one
that
time.
is
Huh?
shows a lot. I think embracing that shows a lot. Like just being like,
Embracing.
yeah, well, like the way you handle it. It's, you're like, hey, I don't always remember. You tell me that, and I've known you for like 15 years or 10 years.
But I don't forget
You're
your
like,
name.
what's your name again? No,
No, I don't. Come on.
not anymore. Like you did for the first like 6 years
Just
I
in
knew
the
you. Like,
first thing. It was very,
yeah,
very adorable, our first.
yeah, something like that. No, And I think it's being able to accept people. Like if there's a will or there were other like red or orange flags, it'd be different,
Right.
but that's, I don't know. And that comes with learning to trust yourself and trust your instincts and be able to be wrong sometimes and
Right.
to backtrack, atone. I have a perfect example of that. I had an incident with a team that my kids were playing on, and there was some kids being um just kind of mean and bullyish and this and that. My kids were coming home and talking to me about it. And
Oh,
I found myself in this position where I wanted to react and I wanted to like react out of my trauma, and which is not a good place to react from. And I found that in that I assumed, and it wasn't, this was like, I want to say 2 years ago. And over the last like 6 or 8 months, I've made it a point to go to a few people and be like, I'm sorry. Like I reacted and I thought that the kid was your kid and it isn't. And I
right.
acted like an idiot and I was trying to protect my son, but at the same time, I made assumptions and I closed myself off to seeing the overall picture. And I just was speaking out of my reaction at the time. And so I think it's maybe going like, I didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to say, to go back and be like, hey, I reacted. I'm so, just for me to acknowledge that that's not how I want to do things. I don't want to react. I want to be there in that time and understand that that wasn't his kid. And no wonder he's acting this way. And I'm just reacting from a defensive place with all this emotion and trauma behind it.
Right.
And so it's a way to help dam up that stuff, or it's a way to keep that where it needs to be, which is personal.
Yeah.
It's, these are each of our individual journeys.
Right.
And if you're here, like you help me go back and look at things that are really hurtful, but I know I have personal boundaries too. So I'm not going to talk about something and I'm also that I'm not comfortable with. And I'm also not going to make it uncomfortable for you. I'm
Right.
going to naturally pivot, but I appreciate you being able to have a conversation with me and make it a place so that we can relive some of those things and add some more actual context and add
Right.
some, like those. This is more what I envision this space being, was that instead of this like, grief and it's okay if it is
If it's what was
like
the other
grief or
thing?
drama kind
Oh
of,
yeah.
or like, because like our trauma isn't drama, but it can get very dramatic.
Right.
And maybe that's not a safe place to just broadcast to other people. So it's, it's interesting. I think being able to go back and have that idea, that I'm fallible. I'm more fallible than probably anybody because of what growing up and living with and trying to be a normal integrated person in what society did. I don't know that I agree with everything society wants. I don't want to be a lemming, and I know that invites pushback. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's kind of how you navigate intentionally through the world. And if you
Right.
do, if you have good intentions and you have a moral compass, then ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Yeah.
And just you'll see who's gonna get offended, and that's them, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But then be like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna be like, hey, is it okay if I talk to you about? I'm gonna ask for forgiveness, not for permission. So either way,
That's good.
yes, 11:04.
A
My
bunch
steps
of
are
people
hard
have
stop.
thanked you, Dylan, for coming on and talking. Sophie has invited both of us to come over to New Zealand. Thank you, Sophie. she she said, she said New Zealand is pretty cool. I'd love to have Tori visit down here. So I'm just saying you can come as my bodyguard.
Yeah, there you go.
There
And
you
yeah,
go.
thanks Rusty for adding context and color.
Yeah, thanks
Philosophy,
everybody. It was really
Ali,
cool. Um,
Stephen.
each person, I've said this for 24 years. Every voice matters, and it really does. It's
Yeah.
amazing. a lot of people think, well, I don't, I don't know that much, so my voice doesn't matter, but it really does. Every voice matters. It really does.
I agree. It's not a competition. Like, we're not in a healing trauma competition where we can all kind of express our opinion, our perception, and
Right.
that'll add to the overall perspective. I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
And Seedlin says, thanks here for being here, Dylan, and for the history and insights. And thank you, as always, Tori. You're welcome. And thank you, Dylan. Really, I
Yeah, my
really
pleasure.
appreciate you coming on. And Sophie says, well, I guess I'm the same as Dylan. Okay.
Boom. Well, all right. Well, let's wrap this. Put a fork in this.
Wrap this thing up. So it says, yes, Dylan, you can escort Tori to New Zealand. I'll pick you all up at the airport. All right. Okay. So thank you, Dylan, for coming on. Thank you, Sophie, for being here as a moderator. Thank you, each one of you, for coming on and sharing your comments and information. It's been very educational. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. Always.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing it. I always learn something from you.
Woohoo. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad that we can exchange ideas and come away with more knowledge and understanding. I think that's great.
That's the way to go. That's the
Yeah.
way to go. All right. So now, what day are we at?
Wednesday.
Okay. See, when you're retired, every day is the weekend.
Yeah, not
So
for me.
I know. When I
I'm up
worked,
at
it was like,
5. I got lunches to make. I got kids to bring to school. I got kids to pick up. I got practice. I got
I
a business
know.
to run.
I did all that stuff, but I'm done with it now. And
And
I'll
it's
tell you
just me
something.
against the world. So
I
take
know.
that, world. I hope you're ready for me. Because I ain't got no one but me, dog. Let's do this. Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I'm 77. I'm going to be 78 in June. I'm going to be 80 in 2 years. That's really freaky. I mean, I thought 70 was weird, but 80?
Yeah, that's crazy. When are you going to start listening to like classical, like not Frank Sinatra, but not Fred Astaire, Liberace? Isn't that isn't
No,
there
I listen to
isn't there
big
a time where you don't listen to, like, you have to listen to classical? Is that I always thought that, like, I'm like, am I ever gonna just stop loving the music I love
no.
and just be like, I have to listen to classical now because I'm old? I'm
No.
waiting for that day. I don't know. You never know. It's not, and
You
no,
never
Kelly, I'm not in the same
I
time
know.
zone
I'm not
ahead
going to
of
be
you.
listening to Liberace. I'm not that old.
I
I
met
might be.
Liberace when I was a kid. Yeah,
Huh?
crazy dude. I met him when I was a kid.
You did?
At an art show in Las Vegas. Anyways,
Wow.
for another day. I met a few people.
Another day.
Yes, for another day.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone. And you're welcome. Born Ancient. All right. Thank you, Tori, Dylan, and chat friends for this wonderful, educational, and inspirational live. There you go.
Thank
That's
you for
good.
being here, Born Ancient. Thank you, Karina. How do you say that? Chirali?
Yeah, I know. I'm not
Chirali?
sure either. Chirali?
I want to like
And One Love
do some
says,
silent
and next
letters.
live, we open with
Liberace, Susan Summers, and
Liberace. No.
yeah.
But one thing I wanted to tell you that I had did a show. My last thing was on Wikipedia. I was telling everybody about how I got Scientology banned from Wikipedia, but I forgot to tell them that the end of the story is that I had helped this guy for 10 years and I kept watching them whittle down Wikipedia. So I finally said, look, you've got to do an investigation. So
Right.
after 10 years, he finally said, okay, we're going to do an investigation. They want you on the panel. And I said, no, because they'll decide the whole panel's false because I'm on it. So you do the investigation. I know you'll find out they're covertly editing and call me when it's done. So they did. But the end of the story that I forgot to tell them was that I said to the guy, because they had whittled down my little Wikipedia site from 3 paragraphs down to like a paragraph and a half, right?
Right.
And I said, look, I've helped you for 10 years, so you need to do a Wikipedia page for me. And he goes, Tori, you have to have references to be on Wikipedia, like, and really have a good page. And I said, I have, I've been doing interviews for years. Go search my name. And the guy, you can type in Tori Chrisman, and it's a huge Wikipedia page.
Nice.
And he
No
locked it
stop
in,
sign.
so they can't edit it out. So that's pretty cool.
That's right. No stop sign, speed limits. Ain't nobody gonna slow me down.
There you go.
It's ACDC.
All right. Well, see you at the next time we chat.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
We'll
And
talk to you.
what day? Today's Wednesday, so
Yep, still Wednesday.
my next thing will be Friday night at
Nice.
late at night. It's a midnight.
I got track meets all weekend. It's track season.
Oh,
So-
are you going to be running, or the kids?
I'm not in high school. I was in the Sea Org. No, it's my kids. Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a good weekend. Have a good end of the week and a good weekend for everyone.
Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, and happy Easter for anybody who celebrates Easter.
Yay, go Easter. Eggs are going to be expensive this year.
What?
All right.
What'd you say?
I said eggs are going to be expensive this year, I bet. 11/11. Perfect timing. Happy 11/11, everyone.
Wow, happy 11/11. All right, I'm going to hit the end stream. I'm sorry, the frogs are here, so I've got to go. Good night.
Good night.